Okay, it's 7:02 p.m. I will start tonight's Board of Selectmen meeting of Tuesday, May 5th, 2020. In accordance with the requirements of the open meeting law, please be advised that this meeting is being recorded, and tonight it is being broadcast over YouTube Live. We are not actually live on Lunenburg Public Access because of a technical equipment failure that we are remedying. But it is being recorded and broadcast onto YouTube Live. You can find the YouTube Live under the Lunenburg Access YouTube channel. Town of Lunenburg, in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, is currently following the guidance from the Lunenburg Board of Health, Massachusetts Department of Public Health, and CDC regarding the virus and steps communities can take to prevent its spread. And therefore all town facilities remain closed to the public. In accordance with the governor's order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, general laws, chapter 30A, section 20, all public meetings are being conducted remotely. This meeting you can access to the public by going to Zoom, and the Zoom ID, if you're calling in from a phone, iPad, tablet, or computer, the webinar ID is 909-174-0347. And if you do not have any of those smart devices and are calling from a phone, you can call 888-475-4499. And again, the webinar ID is 909-174-0347. As is the case with all remote meetings, I will take a roll call of our board members while I unmute them. And board members, I will leave you unmuted as well as you, Madam Town Manager, unless there's feedback or something. Okay, that should be everybody. Okay, so I am the chair. I'm Tom Alonso. Vice Chair Phyllis Luck, are you the present?
Yes, I am.
And Clerk Damon McQuaid is not here this evening. So we will go to member Katie Adams. Are you here?
Present.
And Michael Ray Jeffries, are you here?
Present.
And we have the Madam Town Manager. Are you here?
Here.
Okay. So as there are other participants in the meeting, and as they become active, I will introduce them or they will introduce themselves. And we will start. So I will ask if there is any public comment from the board this evening.
I would just make a brief one.
Sure. Mrs. Adams.
Just a general one, just continuing to think of everybody. I know it's been so many weeks now with teachers and students and Google Classrooms and the class of 2020 and everybody trying to make sense of everything. So I guess my comment is just that I think of everyone often, as isolated as we are. I know everybody has a lot of unique things going on and probably a lot of them, you know, negative. So just thinking of the students in the class of 2020 and athletes and everybody who's impacted by a sense of loss, especially like high school seniors. They were ending everything anyways, and they lost their ability to have closure. So my thoughts are with everybody as we move through the spring.
Thank you. Any other board members? For those joining who are on the Zoom meeting, you can't unmute yourself, so I have control of that. If you want to say something, like when I'm going to call for public comment in 12 seconds, just use the raise your hand, locate the raise your hand feature on Zoom. Depending on what device you're using, it'll be in different locations, but familiarize yourself with that, and during any public comment, I will call on you. Phyllis.
I have a question. I had my hand up when you asked for public comment, so I'm not sure when we're supposed to just speak and when we're supposed to use the hand raise.
When I ask for the board, it's just the board who's on, so you can I'm assuming everybody will see or hear if somebody else is talking. You can put up your hand as well, and I just saw it now, so. We're trying to keep
Okay.
it a little looser
One
than.
thing I wanted, my public comment was, I wanted to make sure all residents are aware that they may apply for absentee ballots for all and or any elections in 2020 due to COVID-19. I just sent my ballot in for the June 2nd special election, and it was easy. If you want home and not go to the polls, you can vote absentee. Usually you have to be out of town or incapacitated, but COVID-19 provides us with a reason many people won't want to go to the polls. So you can cast absentee ballots in 2020.
Yeah, I think they're calling it mail-in ballot, but yes, it's the same thing. And yes, that is good advice to people. And I believe, Madam Town Manager, I know this is not your area, but I assume the town clerk is fielding these questions. If people, like I got something in the mail from a candidate, so I can send it in and ask for a mail-in ballot, but I'm assuming the town clerk is fielding these questions.
Yes. Also in the updates I give regarding COVID-19, and the information is on the website as well.
Okay, excellent.
You know, that is a good question, because I taught before. I remembered that Heather had given us this information to us in an update before, but I couldn't find it. So I emailed both town clerks and they didn't know what I was talking about. So I think that someone should send town managers report information to the town clerks so they understand.
It is the town clerk's responsibility to take care of elections, so
I'm just saying they didn't know what I was talking about. That's all. We're only reporting what happened today.
Okay. Do we have any public comment from the public? Okay, seeing none. Announcements. I only have one, and I may be stealing some of the town manager's announcements, but I'll do it anyway. So because of the governor's revised stay-at-home orders and the restriction on gatherings above 10 or 25, I can't remember which one, and that extends to May 17th, the town caucus will be canceled. And we won't be able to have it because we cannot have it within the time frame allotted by law early enough before the election. So there will be no town caucus this year, unless of course the election gets pushed out forever, at which point, but right now with the town election being in June, we cannot have a town caucus and fit the deadlines of Massachusetts state law.
So what does that mean exactly? I mean, if the town caucus is canceled, have we received nomination papers for the open elected positions?
Everybody else, I guess, is going to be a write-in.
I mean, you can get elected with one write-in in Lunenburg, which could be problematic.
I didn't make the rules. I thought there were multiple ways I came up with that I suggested to town council that got shot down by the Secretary of State. So, Madam Town Manager.
I just wanted to add, so there were a total of 6 people that submitted nomination papers for 6 different seats. The rest are open as far as no one submitted papers for. So the only way would be a write-in or a sticker campaign. And so I emailed the town clerk today to ask her that question. And she said, so if anyone wants to do a sticker campaign, please contact her office so she can give you the dimensions of the sticker that would be able to be used.
Okay, 7:05, public hearing for the transfer of all alcohol restaurant license from S.E. Flan Inc. to Il Forno Lunenburg Bar Inc. at 494 Electric Ave. Now, I think I have to, because it's a public hearing, I have to read the hearing. Hopefully there's the document in there. I don't see the public hearing document in our drive. No. Do you have that, Madam Town Manager?
I do not, and I did not see that it was not there as well. Let's see if it's attached to the application.
I will open it there as well. I'm not seeing it on the application.
I do know it was properly advertised.
Okay. Okay, well, we'll just start with it. So this is an application that came before us that we knew was coming. Is anybody on here who represents Il Forno? Okay, Mr. Avini, I will unmute you and you will identify yourself or selves.
Attorney Jeffrey Avini, I represent Mohammed A. Mohammed, also known as Mike Mohammed, and the applicant for the transfer of the liquor license.
Okay, so we had the application. Has everybody in the board had a chance to review it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Madam Town Manager, it has gone through all the proper channels and gotten all the proper approvals as far as, you know, background checks, query checks, et cetera, correct?
Yes, and the license is also being pledged, so that has to be part of the board's vote.
That is correct.
For those people watching, you want to explain that?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, as part of the finance package that my client received from Avidia Bank, there was an obligation that the license be pledged. So to comply with his commitment letter and his loan documents, I drafted a sample pledge and sent it to Elaine Peterson, and that was part of the board's package. It's a fairly standard pledge, it's a fairly standard document that's used on a routine basis in these kind of transactions, especially when there's bank financing involved.
Okay. I will open it up to the board if anybody has any questions for Attorney Avini in this matter, or any questions about the application. This had come before us, like I said earlier, and we knew that this was coming. So this seemed to me just pro forma at this point. But are there any questions from the board?
Yeah, I looking at the most recent information that we have, I mean, am I correct in reading that it's against our rules to accept a pledge?
I don't believe so, but I'll defer to the town manager.
No, it's not against the rules to accept a pledge. It just has to be the board has to agree to it as part of the vote.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments? Because it's a public hearing, does anybody on here want to comment one way or another regarding the applicant and the application? For or against?
Does the pledge have any effect on the town?
No, it doesn't give any right to that license if there were a default.
So it's of no consequence to the town that it's in there.
It's a matter of procedure and part of Mass General Law that it has to be voted upon.
Okay,
We don't ordinarily see pledges. Is it something to do with the financing?
Can you
Yes.
explain what the pledge is, either
I can,
town manager or attorney Vini?
I'll gladly jump in. So again, these are fairly routine loan documents. There's a trend in Massachusetts that the license belongs to the town and it's not saleable. However, a lender is going to want it pledged in the event that the obligor, the person responsible for the pledge tries to sell a license, and the lender would have to be placed on notice. So it's more of a procedural matter, to make sure that the license stays in place for the benefit of the lender. But again, the license does belong to the town. So the pledge is just simply more of a notification issue than anything else.
Okay, so it's not an
Okay,
ownership
thanks.
change.
No, we couldn't, if there was a default, the bank can't come in and take the license because the town owns the license.
And I said that so people at home would understand what we're
Correct.
talking. So, okay.
Correct.
Okay, unless there's any more comments, I would entertain a motion by the board regarding the application. Well, I'll close the public hearing first. And then take a motion and on the application for the all alcohol restaurant license from S.E. Flan Inc. to Il Forno Lunenburg Bar Inc., including the aforementioned pledge.
So moved.
So I have a second. Mr. Jeffries seconded that. These are all roll call votes in remote meetings. So one by one, Mrs. Adams, Mr. Jeffries,
Aye.
Mrs. Locke,
Aye.
and an aye for me. So 4-0. You have the license. You can coordinate with the town manager when that will be available to you. I think it's got to go through probably ABCC, right?
Okay, I'll communicate with Elaine tomorrow because I know the ABCC is up and running. We just want to make sure that we expedite getting the package delivered. We've been through this one or two other times, so we're familiar with the process about how it goes to the ABCC and they do their review and approval. So again, I'll get with Elaine tomorrow about how to expedite getting the package to the ABCC.
Sounds perfect.
And
Good luck.
Mr. Chair,
Good luck when we reopen.
We are looking forward to it. I think anybody that knows Mr. Mohammed's reputation, he's already done quite a bit of work there. And he's really looking forward to, kind of serving the community of Lunenburg.
Sure.
Thank you very much, sir. Looking forward to serve the community.
and thank you guys for the well-written and communicated alcohol policy that you provided to us.
Mr. Mohammed's kind of a concerned citizen. Just so the board knows, the alcohol part of this is to supplement the restaurant. If anybody's ever eaten at one of Mr. Mohammed's establishments, it's really about the food, and the alcohol is just there because it's part of the ambiance. It's part of what makes the whole project work. So again, we spend time on that policy. He makes sure all his people are tips trained, and we try to stay on top of it the best we can.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Okay, on to the next meeting.
We're good, folks, correct?
You are, yep. Good night. We have a 7:10 meeting with Randy and Lena Grosser regarding a vote to return Embers Pizzeria Inc. under Randy and Lena Grosser, the license back to Embers Pizzeria. That was very strangely worded, but basically the license is going back to Embers Pizzeria from Randy and Lena Grosser. So do we have any of the parties involved? So we have Lena, is that you there? Yes, okay, I'm gonna unmute you. And Mr. Ricker, you are here. Yeah, there you are, okay. All right, so Madam Town Manager, if you can introduce this, and then we can leave it to the both parties to say what's going on.
Yes, so this license, the board approved the transfer back, I believe it was December. And it went through the process through ABCC, but now the parties are wishing to return the license back to the original owner. And there's a document from the grocers that they were unable to purchase Ember's Pizzeria due to the COVID-19 crisis. And they would like to transfer it back to Ember's Pizzeria under Ken Ricker and Josh Hillman.
Okay, has everybody had a chance to read that letter?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. To Lena and Randy, do you want to say anything? I'll just offer you the opportunity here.
I think the letter says it all.
Okay. And Mr. Ricker, would you like to say anything? Hold on, let me unmute you.
I can't go back to the.
Okay, there you go. Your mic isn't working even though I've unmuted you. Oh, no, now you're muted. Hold on, let me unmute you again. It's like your mic level is not up or something. Stop, don't push the button. Okay, no, it's still not unmuting you. Are you unmuted on your end? Can you just try it one? Just press your unmute, Kenny, once. Okay. Let's try it again. Nope, your levels are not there. It's not, you're unmuted, but we're not hearing anything. So I don't know if there's a technical.
Maybe he
Problem.
can type you a message.
Yeah, if you want, you can type me a chat message, depending on how fast a typer you are, I guess. There's the chat at the bottom of the screen. He said he's all set. All right. So I would entertain a motion that this, so basically this goes back, so this is no harm, no foul. It goes back to Ember's Pizzeria and Mr. Ricker, and we're back to where we were before the transfer in December. I would entertain a motion to that end.
I have some questions.
Sure, Mr. Jeffries.
Yeah, just so I'm understanding the timeline here. And I earlier today, I reached out to the town manager and I believe she clarified any concerns that I had, but I just wanted to clarify with you guys the timeline as I understand it. So when you came before us in December, I believe you guys had a purchase and sale agreement dated from October, and also a lease agreement for 3 years with Mr. Ricker. And so my understanding of all this, because that was what I believe I read in the application packet. And my understanding of this is that now that we are 6 months into this, that bottom line is both of you guys are in agreement to transfer this license back to Mr. Ricker. Is that a fair understanding of the situation?
There was no 3-year lease. And yes, it's a fair assessment.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions from the board?
No, I would make a motion that we would transfer the license from Randy and Lena Grosser back to Ember's Pizzeria.
Do I have a
Second.
second? Okay, it is seconded by Mr. Jeffries and Mrs. Luck. Okay, roll call vote. Mrs. Adams,
Aye.
Mr. Jeffries.
Aye.
Mrs. Luck,
Aye.
and an aye from me. All right, it is transferred again, just as the previous license, coordinate with the town manager's office and with the Board of Selectmen's office about when that transfer is done. And continued good luck at Embers. Okay. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Grosser, Mr. Ricker. 7:15. Meeting with the DPW director, police chief, fire chief regarding the town fuel tanks. So first, let's introduce who's going to be on here. So we have the town managers already unmuted. DPW director, I'm going to unmute you. Can you, Jack, can you hear us?
I can, thank you.
Okay. Chief Marino, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Okay, you're gonna have to get close to the mic.
I can hear you.
And Chief, thank you. And Chief Marino. Chief Sullivan, I'm sorry.
Yep, I can hear you.
All right, so I'll start with them and the board, and then I think we have members of the Conservation Committee with us too, so commission, so we'll unmute them as we proceed. But let's start. I want to hand it to you, Madam Town Manager.
Muted me. Thank goodness. So the board had some questions regarding the location of the fuel tanks and asked to invite the DPW director, the police chief, fire chief, and the Conservation Commission to discuss the location in terms of the proximity to the Mulpus Brook. So all parties were invited and everyone, it looks like there's a quorum maybe of the Conservation Commission here as well.
I don't know, to the chair of the Conservation Commission, did you want to, are you posted for this evening, Rich?
Yes, we are posted for this evening.
Okay, so let me unmute them for the reasons of opening your meeting, and then you have to go through a roll call. So introduce them one by one and I'll unmute them.
All right, I don't see Todd Dwyer. Bob Pease is present.
All right, hold on, let me unmute him. Bob?
Present.
Bob Pease present. I do not see Katie Childs. Carl Luck,
I'm present, Richard.
Jack Rabbit,
Hold on, Jack. Go ahead.
Jack Rabbit, are you present?
Yes, I'm present here.
And I believe I saw Ken Jones.
Yes.
I am present.
All right, so that designates a quorum of 5 members.
Okay, so I'm going to leave you guys unmuted unless things get unwieldy with this many people unmuted. But so I don't know, Madam Town Manager, who of the team, the DPW director or the 2 chiefs wants to introduce this and at least give a summary of where we are, and then we can take it from there.
I'll let the DPW director start off.
Okay, Jack.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and all. I can tell you where we are. We followed the process through the Capital Planning Committee 2 consecutive years till we got what we thought was the adequate amount of money to do the project. We went through the capital planning project, made the cut, made the town manager's cut, went to town meeting, and it was voted last year's town meeting to move forward with the project. Since then, we've hired not 1 but 2 engineers and have gone to the Conservation Commission meeting 1 occasion. We were asked, and understandably so, to supply a notice of intent. They needed more information, which we're in the process of doing as we speak. We hope to have that done shortly, and at that point we'll get on the agenda.
Okay,
for the Conservation Commission. I mean, I'm not exactly sure, Mr. Chairman, except for the fact that there were some questions. It's difficult for me to answer those questions or the information required by the board or a single person that called in. I'm not sure where you'd like to go with this, but, you know, I'd like to hear from, you know, our police chief, our fire chief at the appropriate time. I guess I would ask you, we're in the process, we're totally transparent. It was a town meeting vote, which in my estimation trumps, no pun intended, trumps all other votes. So, you know, we'd like to continue to move forward with the, in the good graces of the Concom and get this project underway. It's very important.
okay.
I have some
I think just to focus, I think the reason why there were questions was not the project funding or the project itself. It was the location of the tanks. That's what had come up on a couple of meetings. So I believe there's people on this call who can address that. But before we get to them, I'll open it up to the two chiefs. If either one of you want to add to what the DPW director just said in opening. I'm sure there'll be questions for you. So Jim, do you have anything to add?
I got a lot to add, but
Okay.
I don't think you have enough time to listen to me. I have a whole timeline. We spent a voluminous amount of time working on this project, more so than we should have. If you got the time, I'll go through the timeline, but there's a lot of effort put into this. The police department, the fire department, and the DPW, all the public safety departments rely heavily upon access to this fuel at an immediate basis. When we need fuel, we need it now. Otherwise, it puts the public in jeopardy. The security and safety of the public is in jeopardy if we don't have that fuel right away. We went through all of this. So now we're going through it again, and I'm really angry about this. And I don't, and through you, Rich, it's not the Concom. I know you got your responsibilities, that's fine, but let's get going with this project. I don't see why there's any question about it. It was voted at a town meeting, and I think we should just move forward and get it done. So that's my comment.
Okay, so let me try to, I hear you. So between the DPW director and fire chief and police chief, are you, all three of you, in agreement with where we are? And are you all comfortable by where these are, where you want these located and the work you've done to get here? Are you all on the same page and in agreement that where it has been determined, where the engineers and you have all determined, you're all on the same page that that's where you want them to be? Is that correct? Or am I incorrect?
That's correct.
Chief Sullivan, is that correct? I haven't heard from you.
100% absolutely correct.
Okay, so I think we know where we are there. So I'm going to open it up to the Conservation Commission, because I think there were some members who spoke, maybe not in the party of the commission, but as individuals who had exception to where the location was. So I'm going to actually, hold on a second. We have two from the, Mr. Jeffries, you have a question first before we get to the Concom.
I do, and I didn't realize my house phone's ringing, so let me turn that off. Sorry about that. So, yes, so I have a couple questions. So, so I went back and I watched the video from town meeting last year, because that really is the frame of reference. And what I recall, what's there at the part of the discussion is Chief Marino, Chief Sullivan, and Mr. Rodigans all gave very passionate discussions about why this is needed now. There was a lot of conversation about should this be cards, should this not be cards. There was actually a motion that was made to reduce some of the funding of this because of funding that was being made available to the state. So there was 45 minutes spent discussing this at town meeting last year. my perspective is that this process has been slow coming. It's a little confusing to me why we are a year after the last town meeting and this project is only at this part of the phase. It would seem that we should be a little further along. But during the discussion at town meeting last year, one thing was said. Mr. Rogers, David Rogers, who got up and he said, it makes no sense to me to remove these tanks from the ground from all the environmental concerns and then put new tanks right where they're at. He said, but in my conversations with the people who've been putting this together, I'm under the understanding that these tanks will be located at another part of the property. And in response to that, there were no objections from anyone advocating for the project. And I think that discussion, it quelled every question that could have been there. For 40 minutes, we did not talk about the location of the tanks because it was made pretty clear very early on in that conversation that they would be located somewhere else. So it's very confusing to me why, and I would say that may have altered the effect of town meeting, that the discussion was there was something that was stated and considered to be fact, and no one questioned that. But now we are a year later and we're questioning that. So it seems to me that there is a better location at the property that's less of a potential environmental hazard than the location that's being chosen. We all support the project. We all agree that this should have been done a year ago. This should have been done 6 months ago. We all support the project. What I think that we have questions on is why are they being put in the same spot?
So before they answer, I will say that I saw the same town meeting recording. The comment that you mentioned happened somewhere in the middle of the discussion. The discussion basically was about the removal of $100,000, the motion, from the funding of that article. And the environmental concerns were mentioned in one, maybe two sentences by one of the members of town meeting. It was not, I agree with you that no one rebutted it, but you know what? No one acknowledged it either because it wasn't part of the real discussion of the article. And the location of tanks are not appropriate discussions for town meeting when they're only just acknowledging funding or not funding. You don't get to design the whole process at town meeting. So of course it would not be an appropriate discussion at town meeting, which is probably why it wasn't gone further. However, your question asking how we got here and why the tanks are being put there, I will now let the three directors, the two chiefs and the director respond to that. Whoever wants to first.
I'll start, Tom. First of all, no one, neither Mr. Rogers nor anyone else, just for the record, spoke to me about the project at all. So that was the first I heard of that, but he may have spoken to the chiefs, so I'm going to turn it over to them. But before I do that, I just want to let you know, and I think you can see him on the screen. To me, he's on the bottom right. It's Brian Marchetti. He's the engineer, the civil engineer that we've hired to put the notice of intent together that will be brought before the Conservation Commission. So if it's your pleasure, Mr. Chairman, and when the chiefs speak, if there's a technical question, I'd like Mr. Marchetti to be able to answer it.
Sure.
But now I'm going to be redundant here, but it was brought up, as you said, Mr. Chairman, and there was no amendment. It wasn't to be discussed. And lastly, it was never discussed with me. So I don't doubt he had a discussion. I'm just, for the record, it wasn't with me.
Either of the chiefs want to speak to this.
Yeah, I'll speak to that, Tom, Mr. Chairman.
Chief Marino.
I have in front of me notes from a meeting. It was an informal meeting we had, myself, my administrative assistant or public safety coordinator, Amanda, who's on right now, if you want to unmute her, with Sam Tucker. the administrative assistant down at DPW. Carl Luck was present. I invited Dave Rogers, but he wasn't able to make it, so I briefed him on it afterwards. This was when we're investigating whether or not the use of the cards, the WEX cards, would have been feasible. And during those discussions, and it's right in our notes here, we discussed alternate solutions for everything, including the location of the tanks. But that's all it was a discussion, because it was brought up, and I believe it might have been Carl that brought it up, that there may be environmental concerns. We talked about putting the tanks on the other side of the building, but it turned out it wasn't feasible. I wasn't involved in that segment of the project at that point. I was involved all the way up to the town meeting vote. And after that, it was up to the engineers to decide where the tanks were going to go. It wasn't up to me, wasn't up to Dave Rogers or anybody else. Apparently there was some investigation done by the engineers and it wasn't feasible to put the tanks on the other side of the building. So they're back to where they were, the best place, apparently. And that's how it went. And I had that conversation with Dave Rogers later on, and I had a conversation with him about 2 weeks ago, explaining that I would look into the matter, talk to Jack, and I get back to him, which I did. And I told him at that point, you're right, we did have a discussion, but that's not where they ended up. Simple. That's how it went.
Okay.
Very simple. So we get
Chief
on.
Sullivan, I'm sorry, Chief.
Oh, go ahead.
Anything to add?
No, my recollections of those conversations are the same thing. We discussed that, but as the engineer reviewed that spot wasn't going to work. Now, in the conversations I've had with the engineer, we discussed over in that other spot, I've heard a lot of concerns about impact protection or damage to the tanks. That's already been discussed with the engineer, that those would have to have much more substantial protection because of the vehicles that are around there. But it's certainly doable from a fire protection standpoint or a vehicle safety standpoint over there. I would have concerns about discussion to put them way up on the far back corner of the property because of security issues and not being able to see the tanks, see what's going on up there, any kind of monitoring. Plus, I think Jack could talk to the fact that you would also have to run additional utilities and run other equipment up there, which is going to add to the cost of this project.
Well,
Okay.
to that, Chief, yeah, that was, with all due respect, that was brought up by a member of the Conservation Commission. And a couple of things were brought up by that commission that the chairman then brought to everyone's attention, that they were at that meeting to discuss the location at hand and not choose locations on the property. So that's where we are. To the point of protecting the area, perhaps briefly or as he'd like, I'd like to turn it over to Brian to just give you some idea, at least where we are now, the mitigation measures, the containment measures that will be put in place. Brian?
Mr. Marquetti.
Brian Marchetti from McCarty Engineering. I'm a professional engineer in the state of Massachusetts. I've done a lot of work in Lunenburg. So I was contacted by Jack a week or two ago to come take a look at the site. And on this project in particular, was asked to start putting together a notice of intent filing to submit to the Conservation Commission. So we've specifically looked at the preferred location right now, which is basically putting the tanks back in the same location, but above grade. So these will be brand new tanks. State code requires them to be double wall containment, so it does have additional protections built in. These tanks will be installed on a concrete pad. There are several different things that would be incorporated with the installation of these tanks to provide redundant protection and storage in case of spills, or, you know, we've been asked to look at something like a catastrophic failure. So specifically with the tanks, they'll be on a concrete pad. They could have a knee wall associated surrounding the pad. So any type of break we'd have adequate storage for, a percentage of whatever the fuel is in these tanks. As far as I know, I believe they're two 4,000 gallon tanks. So a knee wall of a foot or two around these tanks on the pad would provide, if not, 50%, whatever the number is. We haven't, again, designed these things yet completely, but would provide significant storage. So that in itself is a redundant. Not only are they double wall tanks, a pad with knee walls around it would provide a large volume of storage. Other BMPs that were considered are outside of the tank area, a berm downstream, or downgrade, not stream, downgrade of the parking lot area where these tanks would be located. So that would be an added level of protection if anything did break. And we're talking catastrophic failure here. We're not talking, drips from the pump or something like that. There's a significant level of protection that would be provided just with a berm alone, down gradient of these tanks. Right now on site, there aren't any stormwater controls on that southern or northern side of the site. There's no catch basins installed currently. It's paved down to a gravel parking area. And then there's a vegetated area within the buffer zone before you get to the brook. So additional levels could be in place down there. Their site could be, or the pavement could be regraded down there to fit a catch basin. You could route these to another type of structural control, like an oil water separator, or, all of these things are redundant treatment practices that are designed to store and contain any type of fuel or oil spills.
I'd like to ask a question, Brian.
Yes.
From what you said, you've been involved in this for about a week or two. A couple of us had a few questions, and I don't think that any of us had concerns about, to the chiefs, anything that happened prior to town meeting. I think our only questions are is this the best location at the property to have these tanks? And so in your professional opinion, is this the best location at the property to have these tanks?
I think it's not a one answer question. It's the location of these tanks has to be based on input from the end users.
Did you evaluate any other locations?
I personally did not evaluate any other locations.
Okay, so I guess my question to Jack here is, what did we ever consider another location other than the current one?
May I, Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Rodriguez.
Okay. Yeah, it's not fair to Brian. As he said, we just brought him on 2 weeks ago. Our other engineer was not able to make it tonight. That's Bob Carluccio from Web Engineering. And it was with him that I explored only one other site on this property. And the only other alternative was on a different property. So let me explain that. The other one alternative that we came up with was to put a substation or some fueling apparatus at the public safety building. If you enter the public safety building on the right, we call it the helicopter pad. There's a pad out there. It's very near the backup generator for the building. And it was sort of a dart at the dartboard. Geez, this might be a spot. After discussing with the chiefs and fire and police personnel, that wasn't a very good spot for obvious reasons. That's a public safety building, the traffic in and out, not that the traffic should be interrupted anywhere, but certainly we wouldn't want a front end loader bouncing down that driveway since they only have one means of egress anyway. So we took that off the docket. The second, or 1 and 1A, the other location was here at 520 Chase Road as you face our building to the right, to the southerly side, where there's a huge sand pile. I did have some discussions with the chief prior to conferring with the engineer, and our discussions were about not at all environmental, but they were, geez, if we could pull this off and we could put this over in this location, we could continue to use the existing tanks, construct the new tanks, and then that interruption would be minimized. So, at that point, we brought an engineer on board and we looked at that. And I can tell you there are a number of reasons why that's just not feasible. One is the existence of 2 storm water drains that crisscross that property coming from the smaller salt shed that we have there that would have to be rerouted. All the electronics would have to be brought to that end of the building or wired and conduit and everything to the other end of the building. That's a big expense. It still pitches down, if we put in that location, to the Mulpus Brook. And I hung a tape on it myself in both locations, and it's within 40 feet and on the same grade as the northerly side of the building. So we don't gain a hell of a lot in terms of distance to the brook. Maybe most importantly, from a mechanical standpoint, is that if you're familiar with the area, that sand pile now has been pushed way back because for years now we haven't used any sand in the winter operations. But I have in front of me the survey that was done, and the topography there at the level of the sand as it is now, the asphalt level, which I don't know if I said, that's also the water table. It's exactly, I think, 10 inches. We dug a hole, you dig down there 10 inches, there's the water table. So you've got the 2 drains that crisscross it, stormwater drains. You're trying to build on the water table, or you would have to build on the water table. And when you look to the rear of the building, there's a 15-foot elevation difference between that level as you stand there and the top of the natural ground, which means removing the sand, which may not be difficult. We don't know what's behind it, but what we do know is behind it is a 15-foot elevation change. Now, unless you're going to build a 15 or 16-foot retaining wall around all of that, which I think would be a financial burden, you'd have to put a 3-to-1 slope off that 15-foot elevation change, which effectively brings you out towards the brook direction 45 feet. Now, if you start right there and try to build your project, number one, you eliminate that storage for us. You still have the drainage problem, and you're up against an easement, which the power company has for the high tension lines, high voltage lines that go across. That easement is exactly the front of our building. So as you picture that, if you come 45 feet from the rear of the land and bring that easement across, you can't really effectively put it in there. It just doesn't fit. So there's environmental issues, there's water table issues, there's traffic issues. I mean, if the traffic issue alone would be enough to, scratch that off the docket. There's 2 huge telephone poles there, poles that hold the high tension wires. There's a ramp that goes up into the back. There's no place for larger trucks to back up or the smaller vehicles to go around the pumps. 4 to 6 months a year while we're in winter operations, it would be a cluster. It's just, you know what? It was looked at. There were reasons why we looked at it. It didn't cut the mustard.
Mr. Marquetti, if I may ask a question, which is directly in your line of expertise. The location that they've chosen, can it be, in your estimation, engineering, can it be properly engineered and safely installed and operated?
Yes, I think it can certainly be designed toward. This is what we do as engineers. We're faced with kind of spatially location problems all the time with projects. And all it is this is it seems to me a very simple grading and drainage exercise. If these tanks are taken out of the ground, which where they are right now, they're underground, they can't be inspected. They're old. So bringing them above ground with a new system, double wall containment, everything has to meet the latest code. It's going to be reviewed and approved through, our public processes with Conservation Commission. It has to be done right, and we're putting our stamps on it. So it certainly has to be done according to all the latest and greatest code and building regulations and Conservation Commission requirements and DEP regulations. So we're taking a situation where the tank has to go here, so we're going to design toward that.
Okay.
And it's certainly not something that is unheard of. It's certainly not something that, from my professional opinion, is undoable. It's a very simple process of locating these tanks and then designing toward it.
Thank you. Mrs. Luck.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, this is Carl Luck. If I could speak now, or I'll wait if you choose.
Sure. Well, I think you were outspoken against this location, so it's probably appropriate.
Thank you. Yeah, I would have phrased it a little differently. I was outspoken in terms of needing to truly do a good analysis of this is the best location. And the question is, what's the best location? I have no question in my mind that Mr. Marchetti and his firm can work with conservation to come up with a solution that will best protect the environment as possible. And that would be the charter, and that's what they would do with the NOI as presented to them. My concern is even tonight, I haven't heard a lot of true investigation into alternate sites. I've heard a couple statements that I cannot verify. One was that the engineers deemed it's not feasible to put it anywhere else. Mr. Marchetti has not been on board long enough. He deferred. The only other engineer that I'm aware of that was participated was the one who came to the Conservation Commission. And in the Conservation Commission, he stated on record, and you can go to YouTube to have to refresh my memory. He stated that he did not look at alternate sites. He said on any site, there's always other opportunities, and that if it wasn't at that location on the DPW site, it would probably be in the area of the sand pile. So unless there's another engineer out there who actually did an analysis, and I appreciate Jack Quinn's comments, and I'm sure they're all valid, and they may all play out in a true engineering evaluation, but no engineering evaluation has been done on any other locations. And the key thing is that we have an opportunity here, and that was all I was pushing for, is to have a discussion that we don't miss an opportunity. We have an opportunity to take a situation where we have a lot of fuel stored in the 200-foot riverfront area, and we have an opportunity to move it out. And I'm just asking, and I appreciate and thank the BOS for having this discussion tonight. If it's moved out, and I'm very sensitive to Chief Marino's terms, and I think possibility we could come up with a better solution. Time may be of the essence. We don't know, but time may be of the essence, and we should move quickly. I think we would have a reduced time if we're outside the riparian zone. There is no NOI required, and we don't have those months of hearings like we may have. We had extensive hearings on similar situations with the gas station on Electric Ave and the Unitil, which were both within the wetlands, and there were a lot of hearings, and there was a lot of mitigation in order to make sure that they were safe, and that mitigation costs money. So I think if we can get it variant, if we can have an honest, open discussion and an engineering analysis, we could get it out of the riparian, get out of the conservation, save that time, save that money. The mitigations are definitely, mitigations are going to cost more. Mr. Marchetti identified some of them there. The hearings are certainly going to cost for the resources, and I don't know what other cost impacts there will be. Mr. Roberts mentioned some. Finally, the other big advantage, which Chief Marino mentioned, is if we can put this in another area we can get that up and running before we ever disrupt the current source. And just to be clear, when the tanks are taken out, there are going to be soil samples taken and sent off for analysis. If those soil samples come back with any oil in them, then we're going to be into another whole can of fish. And I don't know how much downtime there might be. If we could find another place safely away from the repairs, get it up and running, and then deal with getting rid of the tanks in due time, then I think the town would be better off from a timing point of view. I think we get there quicker. I think we get there cheaper, and there may be other advantages if people open up their mind and get creative. But there has been no engineering. There has been no serious engineering done of any other location. That is the frustration to me.
Mr. Rodriguez, DPW Director, you had your hand up.
Yeah, if we can get a document from that original engineer. He's still on board, if that's helpful. If we're going to take out those tanks. When we do take out those tanks, if there's soil issues, we're going to have to deal with that anyway. I understand and brought it to Mr. Chief Marino about, geez, best case scenario, if we had another location, it might work well for timing. We don't, unless we plan to move it off this site. It's my opinion, it's the opinion of the fire chief, it's the opinion of the police chief, that unless we move it off 520 Chase Road, there's no viable spot here to do it. I, for one, appreciate the information I've been given by the Conservation Commission, and particularly the chairman. And I can tell you one thing, that the Conservation Commission will never be accused of holding us to a different standard. I mean, but at the same token, by the same token, I don't think we should have to go further than the rules and regulations. And our redundancy in terms of mitigation will prove that we will be far beyond. The double wall tank itself is fine. We plan to be redundant in that area to make sure. This is my home here. I spent more time in this on 520 Chase Road than I have with my own family in the last 26 years. So if anybody's cautious about it, or cautious about infiltrating the beautiful Malpas Brook that goes to Hickory Hills, I mean, it's going to be done. It's going to be done correctly. Every I will be dotted and T will be crossed. How long are we going to look at? Let's look for another location. This is the location. There was no amendment made at town meeting. We can keep this on. It seems to me at some point that there was a substantial argument against this project at town meeting, and it didn't go in that direction. Now it's going another. Now there's an argument about something else against the project. It's frustrating. And Mr. Jeffries brings up a good point. Where are we now? How long is this going to go on? How long is this going to go on? It was, I put my faith in the people at town meeting. If I don't get what I like there, I pick up my marbles and go home. This is what they voted. This is what we're going to do. And we're going to do it safely.
We hear you. I think you're going to need to find a flashlight soon too, Jack. We can almost not see you. Mr. Rabbit.
Yes. Through you, Mr. Chairman, Richard Birch, may I speak as, as a member? Usually, I'm not quite sure about the protocol, Tom. Do I speak?
You're at an open meeting, you've called into order. I don't think you need the chairman's permission. If he wants to grant it, fine, but you don't need permission to speak.
Okay. Hey, first of all, two things, if I could. First of all, I've put some material together for tomorrow night's meeting that I think would be very relevant. And if I could, I'd like to share my screen with you to give you the perspective of where we're coming from.
Tomorrow night's meeting is about the culvert. It's not about the tanks.
Then I'm wrong. I put the material together. I thought we were going to have a conversation that was going to be continued, but if we're not, that's fine. I have material ready. In either case, I'm in good shape. But even before I get started, Chief Marino and Chief Sullivan, I do want to thank you so much. Chief Marino, you helped my girls. when you did all that training. Remember the resistance education?
Oh, yeah.
You had an impact on them, and I really sincerely thank you. And Chief Sullivan, you kept my house from burning down, along with Ken. But and for that, I appreciate that. And Jack, you've been very, very helpful since with my experiences dealing with the across things. So I have tremendous respect for you. I also voted for the property, to be essentially all in one piece. I'm here because and I'll share with you my agenda if I can pull the screen over, but essentially we have some regulatory issues that say that, you know what, if we're going to go down this path, we're going to have to do other things. And to Carl's point, it may be more than what you're willing to go through. And there are alternatives with the information we have right now. Remember, we've not been presented with anything in terms of specificity with regard to the material composition, the product itself that you're going to try to install. So if that's the case, can I will share my screen.
Hold on, before I'm not going to give control over somebody to share their screen. These meetings are tricky enough.
Okay.
Is this all, I'm assuming, Jack, these are all conservation-based things?
Well, no, there's actually, yes, that's correct. And if you want, I'll just walk through.
And there is a forum. This is going to go through a process with your commission. Is that correct?
It will.
It's already going through it.
Okay, but just to share with you, Tom, and the rest of the board, the 310 CMR regulation says, first of all, anything outside of 200 feet is okay, beyond our capability to have an influence. Anything within 200 feet of that river essentially falls within the jurisdiction of the 310 CMR section 10. And essentially, they said the presumption where a proposed activity involves work within the riverfront area, the issuing authority shall presume that the area is significant to protect private and public water supply, to protect the groundwater, to provide flood control, to prevent storm damage, to prevent pollution, to protect land containing shellfish, wildlife habitat, and fisheries. The presumption is rebuttable. You can come back and rebut it. But the thing of it is, and you may be able to overcome it, but the first criteria was, from our perspective, are you affecting private or public water supply? Yes. Could you affect pollution? Yes. Is this going to affect the wildlife? Yes. If we have that failure. And what we're attempting to do is protect the fisheries? Yes. So in all cases, we have to come back and become very aggressive in that mode. And where the presumption set forth in 310 is not overcome, the applicant shall prove by a preponderance of evidence that there is no practicable and substantially equivalent economic alternative to the proposed project with a less adverse effect and interest. That means that you're going to come back, Jack, you're going to come back and you say, I want to do this, and this is what it's going to cost. We're going to come back and say other alternatives, and we want to see the cost to those alternatives if you're making an economic argument. So it's on you to prove to us that essentially you've done everything possible and economically feasible to put that in that location and avoid any kind of effect of public water supply, land fish, and habitat. So that's where we're coming from. We have to, it's the law. The reality is, from your tanks in the highway department, it's a straight shot from a mile and a half straight shot down the Mulpus into Hickory Hills, and then beyond that into the Mulpus reserves. If we dump 8,000 gallons of fuel through some unknown mechanism, we're going to cause some substantial environmental damage to those pristine areas. So hence, we're really, really sensitive, and we want to be aggressive in that regard. Okay, so we were looking at essentially the demarcation lines with regard to the 100-foot and the outer 200-foot outer riparian zone. Right now, your location is approximately 150 feet out, right? And okay, it's in a tank, it's underground. It's been relatively maintenance free. There's not a lot of other pieces going aside from it's rusting out and aging out. The proposal that we saw or that we've received so far, in fact, you've moved the filling station closer into the 100-foot zone than you had. And at the same time, the storage tanks are sitting midway between the 100-foot and the 200. we have to be aggressive with regard to how to challenge that. But anyway, you can come back and request an ecological restoration plan. And the request of the determination of the applicant means a written request by any person to the conservation as determined whether or not the site work thereupon is subject to the laws that we're trying to support, right? So your ecological restoration planning is an alternative, as well as simply moving it outside of the 200 foot. Now,
Mr. Rabbit, I'm gonna interrupt.
Yeah.
Okay, because not only didn't I want you to have the screen to do a presentation, I didn't want you to do an oral presentation either.
Okay.
So I'm gonna ask you to get to the point of what you're saying. It sounds like they haven't presented to your satisfaction alternatives. Is that correct?
And be prepared for a hardcore risk analysis that we'll be looking. And by the way, I appreciate Brian Marchetti with regard to your risk. You're talking particularly just hardware risk, hardware failure. But there's other pieces, there's process failures that also need to be reviewed with regard to the documentation. How well are people trained? What do they do in certain circumstances? We would review that. The training, the personnel safety, all those things that could potentially affect that environment. So we will go through a hard analysis on that. We have to.
I would hope you would, as the Conservation Commission.
That's what we're going to do.
Mr. Jeffries.
Yes. Thank you for the additional information. You know, one thing that was mentioned is that, you know, people at town meeting, you know, didn't vote for a plan. You know, they voted for a concept, right? And they allotted money. So, you know, I just want to be clear that you know, I do believe that there was a insinuation, a statement that was made that it persuaded me. I didn't say anything during that talk because that was my only concern. But I think that where we are at now is, you know, what's going through my mind is, why did we not talk to the conservation agent in town as we were developing this plan? I mean, why are we in a position that we're potentially going to spend money that we don't need to spend, and to have a statement, an engineering analysis for $5,000 that explains that, hey, this is the best location at this property. It just seems that there was an opportunity here for us to work together to get to a good result that meets everybody's needs. And instead, we're kind of in this adversarial position, and we're talking about spending who knows how much money, because it doesn't seem as if we did our due diligence on this. You know, when we design something to be within a certain buffer of a water source, it just seems prudent to me that we would try to do everything we can do to avoid that. You know, and it's not clear why now we're looking back on this to get it approved instead of during that point between May of last year till right now, why nowhere in this 12 months we could have had this conversation.
Mr. Pease.
I would just point out that at the Conservation Commission meeting, toward the end of the meeting, when it became clear that the town was going to have to come back, that they were going to get a positive determination on their RDA, and they were going to have to come back with an NOI, the chairman took a straw poll. You know, to try to be fair to Jack, to, you know, of the commission to say, you know, are you okay with this site? You know, do you think this site can be made to work? You know, and if we had all the proper documentation and all of the protections, you know, that we're looking for, you know, is this site doable? And 6 members of the commission participated in that straw poll. You know, the chairman didn't participate, you know, and I wouldn't expect him to because he's the chair. And Mr. Rabbit was the only one who said they couldn't live with that site of all the other 6 commissioners.
Okay,
so
let's go.
You know, it's like, if I had my choice, would I put the gas tanks there? No, I wouldn't. But we have rocks and hard places here. And I would point out that right now, that's where the gas tanks are now. And I think it's inappropriate for us to be talking about environmental concerns and the merits of the location, all this other stuff tonight at this Board of Selectmen's meeting. You know, all the stuff that belongs in front of the Conservation Commission. And for someone to attempt tonight to take, and make, an environmental case for or against it, and talk about, how the Wetlands Act and the River Act impacts this. I guess that's what I have to say for now.
Mrs. Adams.
Hi, yes, I just wanted to say in terms of our meeting and in terms of our board, and I feel like Mr. Pease just touched upon it, what here tonight is in our jurisdiction and what type of change could or couldn't be done. I mean, this is something that went through town meeting and it's something that's outside of the scope of what I feel like we have any input on. So what's our role right now?
I think that is an excellent question, because as I said, first of all, a town meeting vote is to vote to authorize money for a project. So either you agree with the project, you don't get to engineer the project. So town meeting really doesn't get involved in that. We have a conservation commission, and if it's within the Wetlands Act, that is their job. And if there are things they need to do to make sure that there are mitigating engineering factors that need to be taken into consideration, that seems to be in their purview. It's the two chiefs and the DPW director have met. I trust every one of them and their responsibilities in doing this. And I'm not here to second guess their engineering about where they feel is the best appropriate place. So I feel, Mrs. Adams, the same thing. I don't know exactly what anybody is expecting us. I'm certainly not going to go back to the chiefs and the DPW director and say, you know what? I want you to mothball everything and I want you to start from scratch, because I feel, or some other people feel, that you didn't do enough alternative choice engineering. That's my own personal feeling.
Yeah, I don't see any opportunity for our input here tonight in terms of impacting any change. So I feel like we're caught in a discussion that doesn't belong in our jurisdiction.
I see Mrs. Luck. Is this Carl or Phyllis want to speak here?
It's Carl.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna give you the thing, but please make it brief.
I will. Only 2 points. One to Bob's comment. I did vote when the chair asked if I could foresee approving a proper document, and I said I would, and I said earlier tonight, there's no question there. To Ms. Adams' point, I think what I would hope what's before the board tonight has nothing to do with the conservation's job. That's the Conservation Commission, and if we proceed with the notice of intent, we'll go through the process pretty much like Jack Rabbit outlined. What I was hoping was that there would be some consideration that perhaps this should be done to save the town the cost and the time of going through the Conservation Commission and that process, because it will cost the town money and it will end up with a more expensive project. I'm confident of that. And it just hasn't been looked at. So that's what's in your, nothing to do with conservation or get out of the that's not my point. I would love to see it, but my point is get out of the environmental, so they're out of the Conservation Commission's purview and we're out of the cost and the expense of going in that direction. And we have the security of a supply in place before the current supply is removed. Thank you.
Mr. Birch, did you want to say something? I see you had your hand up.
Just briefly to what the other members had said, I think there's two questions here. One is more in the purview of the Board of Selectmen and the chiefs and the DPW director. That is the location of the tank that the town wants to move forward with before the Conservation Commission. As the chair of the Conservation Commission, I can talk to other applications that we've had that have dealt with fuel depots in close proximity to streams and wetlands, and we have been able to approve them with the proper engineering. Some of the confusion is at the first meeting we had, there was very little information, which is why we gave the positive determination and requested that they move forward with some more engineering and some more plans on what was going to be going into that spot, other than just the removal of the tanks. Brian Marchetti did mention some measures that we had not heard of or had discussed around the tank itself, as far as making a basin for catastrophic failures. The only thing that we had before us was just a 15 or 20 gallon spill trench. So there was no way we could move forward with the application at that time in that location. So I am looking forward to what Brian does design in that spot that has the proper mitigation and the proper controls in place for any emergency spills or long-term spills or stormwater concerns in that area. We have worked with Brian in the past successfully. He's been able to design some very, very well thought out plans for areas and uses that are of environmental concern. So I think moving forward with Brian on the team for the DPW, we should be able to, at least in this location, get the best possible design so that it will be permittable. As Bob said, we did take a straw poll. It was the majority's opinion that designed properly, this location could be used. So, but that's now we're getting into conservation's purview, where I think tonight's meeting is more of just as the town, do you want to move forward with the tanks in that location?
Okay.
Because once you've spent the money on the engineering and the permit applications, you're tied into that spot a little bit more. So thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Jeffries.
Yeah, I think the question that we had last week and the reason why we're here tonight and is really not about why did we present to the town these tanks. It's really is this the best location that we can present for this? And we have to understand that there's a cost to all this. What we talk about next here tonight is about money and articles and a bunch of other stuff, and we're looking at, the concern is about money. And should we spend money for this location, the extra money to get this through the conservation commissions and for it to be properly engineered? Should we spend that money if we haven't first considered if this is the best location? And my answer to that is no. No, we should not spend money on going through conservation if there wasn't a viable alternative. And again, what's frustrating to me is why in May, I have a hard time understanding from last town meeting to now how this has been a 12-month process. This seems like a 3-month process that it doesn't feel like a 12-month process. And so I think tonight what I was trying to get clarification on is how did we get to the point of getting these tanks where they are? I can certainly, if the answer to that question was, the chiefs got together based on the turn radius of the fire trucks, based on the amount of vehicles that we need to come in and out of there, it's not feasible, I can accept that answer. But we didn't even have an answer. I don't know why. We don't know why they're being chosen to be in this spot. So we should have an answer to that question before we start spending tens of thousands of dollars. And that's, I think, why we're here tonight. And I don't know if there is clarification on that question. I think I do understand where the chiefs are coming from, and I can support them completely and totally. And I think that the only other thing is that I'd want to know is, has an engineer evaluated to confirm that there's no other location that's viable? If the answer is yes, it's yes. But it's bothersome that we're having this talk in May when, from my perspective, we should have been having this talk last September or October. As I've been asking about this monthly since then.
Anybody want to answer that? Is there an answer to that?
If I could just, one quick comment on that, and no offense to Brian Marchetti, he is just one professional here this evening that is recommending this spot. We have the chief of the fire department, the chief of the police department, and the DPW director, whom are all professionals in their fields. And all three of them have come forth and said that they have reviewed 520 Chase Road, and this is the safest spot from their professional opinions. So whether you've had an engineer as a fourth professional go in and review the site, we already have the opinion of at least three professionals that this is the best and safest location to continue the use of the fuel depot for the municipality.
And I would thank you, Mr. Birch, because that is exactly my opinion. So again, the engineering part is a part, but it has to be used in a DPW capacity. It's going to be at the DPW site, thereby the DPW director's input. It's going to be used by the police and fire departments. And they have obviously an interest in how it affects their department. The fire chief has the added addition, as he said, about the safety of where the locations, other locations might be, and the safety concerns and the monitoring that may go in those places. So while I can understand and I can appreciate the concerns that are involved with the environmental potential environmental issues that may arise from the location of these, I'm also very appreciative of the fact that 3 of our town leaders looked at this and evaluated it. And I asked them at the beginning of this, did any of them think that this was not the spot that it should be? And they all concurred that it was the spot that it should be. So again, unless we're going to be here to second guess what the people we pay to do these kind of evaluations are doing, I'm not willing to supersede that and tell them, hey, you know what? Go back to the beginning and start all over again because I don't like what you came up with. I'm not willing to do that. I don't know about the rest of the board. We brought this up. People have brought it up on a couple of occasions. That's why it got to be an agenda item. I feel we've heard from everybody. There's no action that is to be determined tonight. And I don't even know if there's any action that we're going to be taking on this. You know, that I would be comfortable taking in throwing this over. We have Mr. Marchetti, who, although new to the project, certainly has admitted, as has what I'm understanding the majority of the Conservation Committee, that yeah, they could foresee this being approved with mitigating measures put in place. So why don't we proceed with that as such and see where we come to with that? There seems to be a case to be made that there is an end result in that that doesn't put us all the way back to the beginning. Mr. Chief Sullivan.
I would just make one further comment that the highway garage has been there since I believe about 1972. It has always had fuel tanks there. To my knowledge, we have never, ever had an environmental issue or a spill involving fueling vehicles or from those tanks. My records can easily go back 25 years. I find nothing. My history goes back even further than that. Chief Marino's goes further back than that. We've never had an issue. We're taking a site and making it safer with the above ground tanks and the additional engineering that we're working on.
Thank you.
Making a current situation even better.
I want to wind this down. I see Mr. Rabbit. Mr. Rabbit, go ahead. I'll let you make a final comment.
Very quickly, I'm concerned that if we continue down this path, we won't see other solutions. The laws are really clear, very clear, and they're complex because of the other pieces associated. But if we need to be looking at both, and part of that vote on our committee was to recommend which direction they should be going. Where in fact, as Bob might note, if he'd read the law, he has to essentially prove that there is no other alternative. And so therefore, I voted not because I'm against this project. I voted because we need to not point in just one direction, because pretty soon all we'll have is a hammer and everything's going to look like a nail. And that's my concern. We have to demonstrate to DEP we've looked at alternatives. We've already got ourselves slapped once. We don't need it again.
Understand, and you can take that up in the Conservation Commission.
Thank you, Tom.
Your hearings in the NOI. All right, I'm going to call this discussion. I want to thank everybody. I want to thank all the people, the whole Conservation Commission, members who are here, the DPW director, the police chief, the fire chief. Thank you for participating in this and your input on all this. And I think that, again, there's no vote to be taken here, but there was discussion that was brought up, and I wanted everybody on the board and everybody in the town to be aware of what was going on. So we were as transparent as possible. I appreciate all your input and all your comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Birch, I think, are you still there? I think you probably have to get your commission out of adjourn. So let me unmute all of your members here.
All right, I'll accept the motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Roll call vote. Richard Birch, aye. Bob Pease,
Aye.
Carlock, Jack Rabbit,
Hold on, Jack should be on, hold on, he's on mute. Go ahead,
Carl
Jack.
Luck, aye.
Jack Rabbit,
Carlock said aye.
and Ken Jones.
Aye.
All right, we stand adjourned.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Chiefs, you are and the DPW director, you're more than welcome to stay, but otherwise, thank you for all your input and have a good evening.
Thank you. Have a good evening as well.
Okay. Let me get back on here. Next up, let's do no interviews, appointments, reappointments, or resignations. So let's go to the town manager COVID-19 report. If you don't, actually, Madam Town Manager, I'm gonna, Madam Town Manager, before you start, we have a member of the public with us who has, so I'm gonna ask if we can take this out of order. So we have Mr. Wernick, who is here about a town meeting warrant article, and instead of making him wait, we can address his concern. I'm gonna unmute you, Mr. Wernick.
How we doing?
Good, yourself?
Fine.
Okay, so Madam Town Manager, if you can introduce the article that Mr. Wernick has by, I believe it's by citizen petition, right?
It is, yes. So Mr. Warnick submitted a citizen's petition requesting the town apply for an additional all alcohol off-premise license for Jack's Country Variety at 1353 Mass Ave. So the board asked, there were some questions regarding this request, and so he was invited in tonight for tonight's meeting. There's also, there are questions regarding whether any of his locations, his liquor license locations had previous violations, the reason for this request. And that's all that I recall.
Okay, so I see that town council has weighed in on this, and that has to do with the format and the way the article is written. Is that correct?
That is correct. It's not in the proper form or substance.
Okay, and because it's a citizen petition, we can't alter it.
Right.
Is that correct?
It has to go on the warrant exactly as it has been submitted.
Has this been, well, I'll ask him directly. Mr. Wernick, have you been made aware of this problem?
No.
Okay. What, did we just get that today?
Yesterday, late yesterday, and that was sent out today.
Late yesterday. So in the opinion of town council, if this were to pass, it would not have the effect that Mr. Wernick is looking to achieve. Is that correct?
Right. It would have to reflect the same wording that we used at a previous town meeting, the home rule petition. So it's getting authorization to have the board, authorizing the board to submit a home rule petition for an additional liquor license.
So where do we go from here? Because I submitted this quite a while ago and actually had asked for someone to help me, do this before I went to the town hall for guidance, so forth and so on. And, now we're at the 11th hour, I'm taking it, and I'm just curious, how does this move forward or not?
Well, I can't speak to the request for assistance, but I can only speak to what is in front of me here. And that is that in its current form, this would not properly authorize the board to ask for a home rule petition special legislation, which is what this is. So even if it passed, it wouldn't have the effect that you wanted it to, because we wouldn't be authorized to request this of the state legislature.
Okay.
So I think some people have comments. So Mrs. Adams. Did I just mute you? I'm sorry. Okay,
Okay, I was just curious what action he'd be able to take to maybe amend his article on the floor. Could he bring new language and make an amendment to it at town meeting to reflect the necessary legal changes?
Madam Town Manager?
That's a good question. I can certainly ask town council and the town moderator if they would, and
Right,
specific.
because it's my understanding as long as it's in the scope of the original article that you can amend it. So I'm not sure if we might be able to help relay the information, because then he could offer the amendment and have it as intended, but match what was legally necessary. I think that might be an option. So maybe we can relay that information to him.
Yeah, so if we can ask that of Town Council.
Certainly.
Mrs. Luck?
The warrant hasn't been voted on or approved. Can't we change it now so that it appears on the warrant correctly? Can't we give him the help that we should have given him in the beginning to construct a warrant article
So
that does what he'd like to have done now,
So the-
so it doesn't have to go to town meeting?
the answer to your question is no, we can't do it beforehand because it's a citizen petition. So we cannot alter it. It has to appear on the warrant as the citizen petition request was submitted.
Can't he resubmit it?
No, because the warrant is closed.
Oh,
But
I think, you know, I think we should have run it by council before the warrant closed because it was a citizen petition. I know in the past that the town has helped citizen petitioners. Sounds like we didn't this time.
Madam Town Manager.
Thank you. I was unaware that request or help was requested, didn't come through me, or I certainly would have helped the petitioner. The petition came in on the last day of the warrant being open. So there was no time to ask for town council's guidance after it was submitted. It was on the last day, very end of the day, I believe.
Well, I can answer that because for a number of years, I've been coming to the town hall inquiring about a full liquor license availability. And this was the first year that somebody even told me that this option was in fact an option. And I only found that out by accident when I was talking to the selectmen, the secretary upstairs, who basically told me, oh, they had applied for beer and wine licenses in addition to the ones that existed for Lanny Orchards and one to have in reserve. And I said, oh, I didn't know this was an available option. She goes, well, it is. And that was like only a few days before the petition was due. So I had to get the signatures, word it myself. I had asked for some help from, I forget the lady's name up in the upstairs there. And basically, you know, I didn't get any direction or focus on that. So I did what I did, put it out, got the signatures necessary and submitted it. So, I mean, the fact that it was submitted on the 11th hour was only because I only found out last minute that this was even an option to do. I didn't, you know, after all these years of inquiring about whether or not these licenses were available, I would have been surprised that they shouldn't have said this something earlier or sooner. I mean, it gets a little frustrating, you know, from my point of view. So that's why it was last minute. I just want to address that. So it wasn't an intentional 11th hour drop off the thing and hope it slides through. You know, I would be more than happy to do what it takes necessary to, you know, correct the speech or make things right. You know, so this can go on to warrant or at the warrant if we have to amend it. If that's doable, then that's fine with me too.
By the way, before the two warrant articles went on last year that requested the additions, I've been a selectman for, 14 years. I didn't know that was available either. So that you could petition the special legislation to get, because they have very strict rules about how towns and their populations get all alcohol licenses and all licenses. So that was new to me even then. So I understand your frustration, but it wasn't like people were keeping things from you, because even we didn't know it until we were told that you could do this.
Well, that's fair enough. I'm not accusing. It's not like I'm saying you withheld it from me. I'm just saying that, you know, I've been here for 20 years, and for, say, 10 of them, I've come up and said, is this available 2 or 3 or 4 times a year? And all this year was the first year that somebody said, oh, we're petitioning. So I didn't even know that option was available either. So I try to take advantage of the option, you know, once I found out it was in fact available.
No, understood. So, so we'll ask that. So Mr. Jeffries, you have a question.
Yeah, so I think what I'm trying to understand, and this question's to Al, or really to Al and Heather. So I'm under the impression, Al, that you can't vote at town meeting, correct? You're a resident of Shirley?
Correct. I have to have somebody stand in and put the petition, which one of my employees who is a resident of Lunenburg is willing to do this on our behalf.
Okay, so the key then is that if the answer is that the language can be amended on the floor of town hall, then we just need to get that language over to you, right? And that would work.
That's fine with me. I mean, I'm open to any help, suggestions. We're just a struggling small business, and times are even tougher now than they were before. So we're just we're trying to make ends meet, and we're looking at other options to keep the business viable. I mean, we've been looking for years at all options.
Okay, because you know, I had a part of one of my questions tonight as well was that I think I saw that you had your business for sale. So I think there was a question of, is it your intention to procure this license so that to increase the value of your building, or is it as this is one of those options that you're trying to explore right now for long-term viability at the location?
My wife would prefer never to sell this business. She loves this business. This is her livelihood. She loves it. If we didn't have to sell, we wouldn't. This is just like we're exploring maybe getting a donut shop or somebody to come in. We're looking at every option possible so that we can maintain the business. That's what she would prefer to do.
Okay. But is it fair that your intention's not to procure the license to then sell the business with that license?
No, it's not my intention to get the license to increase the value. I don't see that as the option, or never actually had thought about it until you brought that up. I'm just looking at ways to stay in business.
All right.
You know?
Madam Town Manager, this question came up when Lanny Orchards requested this, and was it at town council's understanding that if licenses were acquired in this way, that if the business was sold, like they wouldn't necessarily transfer, and they wouldn't even transfer back to the town?
That's all in the wording of how the petition is worded. So if it stays with the location, or is or if not, if it becomes available to another person.
Okay. All right, so we're gonna find out from town council whether what Mrs. Adams has offered is possible. Can he amend it and change the wording then, because we can't do it on the printed warrant?
Yeah, I would just ask if Mr. Orniak, it would be agreeable if the wording could not be changed in the motion. If the fall town meeting, we could obviously help him.
Right, well, that would be the only, I think that would be the only alternative, right? If town council says we can't change this and amend it on town floor, then your recourse would be that bring it up and we'll get you all the wording you need to, and just bring it up in the fall.
That's, you know, I've waited 20 years and 4 months isn't, you know, I mean, I would like it the sooner the better, you know, but I mean, there's no guarantee that even if it goes to the state, that the state's going to say, yes, here's the license. That's my understanding. It's just a question of, hey, here's an opportunity, you know, can we take advantage of it? Yes or no. If the state says, no, we're not going to issue it, then the point is moot. But if the point isn't moot and the state says, yes, we'll give you a liquor license, and that frees up a beer and wine license, then could possibly be transferred to Lanny Orchards. So there would be some tumble down as far as, you know, what you're trying to accomplish.
Sure. We also may want to make a recommendation on that. Well, maybe we're probably gonna, we're gonna have that for next week, right? Probably that town council's opinion.
Yes.
So we won't vote on supporting or not supporting this article now until we see what can be done. I see that I'm going to allow Mr. Passios here, who has his hand up. Mr. Passios.
Yes, Dave Passios, 56 Whiting Street. As a former resident of Lunenburg who brought a citizen's petition forward about 3 years ago, I feel your pain. I'll leave it at that. But I would like to make it clear that I believe, and I think Heather touched on it, I think the conversation, the wording has been a little bit off. But I think the place to correct the problem, if at all possible, is in the motion bringing it onto the floor. If that can't be done, then second to that, then amend it once it's brought onto the floor. But as long as you're within my understanding, as long as you're within the scope of what was printed in the warrant, it can be moved in a number of different ways to bring it to the floor, different from what's printed in the warrant. That's my comment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll investigate that and take it from there. So thank you for joining us, Mr. Wernick, and we will get as soon as we get the opinion from town council about whether that can be done, any of those options, we will do our best to make sure we can go forward and let you know what his opinion is.
Well, I thank you all very much. Please stay safe and healthy, and you guys have a great night.
You too. Thank you. I want to pause for a second because I'm getting reports that this is not live on YouTube anymore. So Pack TV, I had privately messaged you. Let me just unmute you. Emily, are you there?
I'm here. I didn't see it was off live on my end, but yeah, let me just take a sec.
Okay. Yeah, just take a check because if it is offline, I want to give you the opportunity to put it back online before we continue.
Okay, it looks like it's on live now. I just checked on my phone. I'm not sure why it cut out, but it's back. It's back.
Okay,
up.
no problem. Thank you. And please keep monitoring chat in case I have an issue that somebody reports in.
Will do. Okay.
Bye. Okay, so now, Madam Town Manager, your COVID-19 report.
Okay. As in previous weeks, I'll just go over the relatively new items in my report. The Board of Health issued their weekly update. So that has been put on the news and under the town website under the COVID-19 information page. Announced last week, all the town facilities, the closure has been extended to May 18th per the governor's extension of the prohibition of gatherings of 10 or more people and the stay-at-home advisory as well. I put together a reopening task force that consists of our Board of Health agent from Neshoba Associated Boards of Health, the police and fire chiefs, the DPW director, our facilities director, the town clerk, council on aging director, the library director, and myself. So this group will formulate a plan to address the unique concerns of the various departments and how to reopen that protects both our employees and the public. Our first meeting will be May 6th, tomorrow, and the reopening to the public will look different for different departments, and we continue to ask for the public's patience as we deal with these challenges. Information and resources for businesses due to COVID-19. The relevant information and resources for our local businesses is posted on the COVID-19 information page on the town website. A new list of the local businesses that are currently open that is being updated by the Lunenburg Business Association has been posted on the town website and on the town Facebook page. Any businesses that are open and want to be included in this list can contact the LBA president, Wendy Drennan, at wendydrennan487@gmail.com. And you can see a list of this by going to the COVID-19 information page. Board, committee, and commission meetings. I've assisted all the committees and boards that have needed to hold Zoom meetings by providing the necessary documents to run an entirely remote participation meeting, practice Zoom meetings upon request, and signing on at the beginning of all meetings to transfer the host to the chair. Currently, boards and committees are or paid staff in those departments need to contact me to schedule these meetings, as we cannot overbook time slots, as we only have 2 Zoom accounts, and this equates to only being able to hold 2 Zoom meetings simultaneously. Persons interested in the meeting schedule should visit the town website calendar for a schedule of the meetings at www.lunenburgmass.gov, and can also subscribe to get notifications of meetings of boards and committees if they are interested in attending. Updates from the Senior Center. On Monday, May 4th, van transportation services resumed with limited transportation to routine medical appointments and pharmacy for prescription pickups only. Social distancing and other safety practices will be strictly enforced for both the drivers and clients utilizing the van transportation service. Since March 13th, 2020, the staff has made 443 wellness telephone reassurance calls to check on seniors, have delivered 1,067 Meals on Wheels to 42 clients, distributed 39 food boxes to 35 people, and 35 face masks to 34 people. Please contact the Senior Center Director, Sue Doherty, at 978-582-4166 or sdoherty@lunenburgonline.com to inquire about receiving a food box, face mask, or Meals on Wheels delivery. Just announcements again to reiterate the dates for the different town elections and town meeting. The special state election will be held on Tuesday, June 2nd, 2020. The annual town meeting will be held on Saturday, June 13th, beginning at 9 a.m. And due, as Chairman Alonso referenced at the beginning of the meeting, due to the extension of the governor's order prohibiting gatherings of more than 10 people, the town caucus had been rescheduled for May 13th is now canceled. Town caucuses must be held at least 38 days prior to the annual election, and May 13th was therefore the last possible date. And also the write-in and sticker campaign is available, but please contact the town clerk if you wish to do a sticker campaign. The annual town election will be held on Saturday, June 20th at the TC Passios. And as Selectman Luck referred to, also in my report is a lot of information about absentee and early voting per the new Chapter 45 of the Acts of 2020. And those ballots can be obtained on the website, downloaded from the website. Other updates include from the state, just the state numbers. And I'm sorry, I skipped over the number of cases in Lunenburg. As of today, there are 37 confirmed positive cases in Lunenburg, 16 of which have recovered, and 1 death. Statewide, as of May 4th, there are 69,087 COVID-19 cases, 4,090 deaths, and 324,268 patients have been tested to date. All this information is posted on the Department of Public Health COVID-19 website with a breakdown of coronavirus cases by city and town. The governor issued a new order on May 1st, order requiring face coverings in public places where social distancing is not possible. And this requires any person over age 2 who is in the place of open to the public, whether indoor or outdoor, and is unable to do so or does not maintain a distance of approximately 6 feet from every other person shall cover their mouth and nose with a mask with cloth face covering, except where a person is unable to wear a mask or face covering due to a medical condition or is otherwise exempt by the Department of Public Health guidance. This includes wearing a mask at all times inside grocery stores, pharmacies, and other retail stores and transportation services. This order goes into effect Wednesday, May 6th, and a violation of the terms of the order or the Department of Public Health guidance may result in a civil fine of up to $300 per violation. In other news, the Congress and the President signed a new stimulus and relief bill on April 26th. And this legislation is a $484 billion package, which will replenish the dollars in the Small Business Administration's Paycheck Protection Program and EIDL programs, as well as provide additional funding for hospitals and coronavirus testing. The Paycheck Protection Program will receive an additional $310 billion to offer relief to small businesses. Of this, $60 billion will be set aside to fund PPP loans made to small and community financial institutions to reach underbanked communities. And those applications were available from lenders starting April 27th, Monday, April 27th. And that is all the updates I have tonight for related to COVID-19.
Thank you very much. Minutes of February 18th, 2020 and March 3rd of 2020. I would entertain, oh, hold on, I'm sorry, Mrs. Luck.
I had a question on, I know that we're trying to reopen up town government at some point, but I'd like an update on the procedure for allowing activities in town. When reviewing the minutes, I noticed that the BOS gave permission back in February for an art festival to occur on June 18th, and that we also gave the state park folks permission for a toll on the roads. And I wonder, are we assuming these things are going to go forward? Are we assuming everything's canceled and people have to reapply, or what are we doing?
Do you want me to answer
Madam
that?
Town Manager.
I would say we can contact all the individuals that have applied for events that are coming up, and similar to the bicycle event that was recently approved, as long as the governor's order is still in effect, those events would not be able to be held.
And I would concur with that.
Okay, so it just as soon as the governor lifts the restrictions, then everything scheduled may proceed?
Depending on what, I mean, he may not do a full opening, they may do graduated changes.
Right.
So essentially everything's still on hold till we hear further.
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Mrs. Adams.
I had a question. I'm not sure if Heather has the answer to it in regards to things like the executive order of mask wearing and there being fines. Who's the authority, or like who's enforcing this? I feel like it doesn't make sense to me in terms of, we certainly don't have a large staff, and I don't feel I'd want it enforced, but I'm just curious if they've given you any direction in regards to that.
That would, through you, Mr. Chair, so it's a Department of Public Health issue. So it falls under our local Board of Health. And so Neshoba Associated Boards of Health, our agent, Jim Gareffi, that's who would receive any complaints and then investigate those complaints.
So what's the judicial process? Like if somebody was apprehended for not wearing a mask, like out of all seriousness, like what process is in place for any of these orders?
It's a civil fine. So the Board of Health would issue the fine.
So the Board of Health would have to manage all the logistics of these orders.
Yes, they could receive complaints from our police department if that's who it comes from, or any member of the public. They investigate those complaints as well.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Of course, what people are saying on the news is that there's a gaping loophole in this, which is that you don't have to wear a mask if you have a medical condition, but if you have no mask on, no one in the store is able to ask you if you have a medical condition. So therefore, I bet you a lot of people have medical conditions all of a sudden. But that's all right. Neither here nor there. So minutes of February 18th and March 3rd. Do I have a motion on those if everybody has read them?
I'll make a motion to accept those minutes.
Do I have a second? No second to a, oh, hold on, you're muted, Michael.
Second.
Okay, all right. Any further discussion? All those in favor, Mrs. Luck,
Aye.
Mrs. Adams,
Aye.
Mr. Jeffries,
Aye.
and an aye from me. I signed warrants last week. Deduction warrant in the amount of $261,092.71. An accounts payable warrant in the amount of $287,242.79. And the payroll warrant in the amount of $808,982.85. Any action file issues?
Yes, I have a few.
A few, all right.
I would request an update on the Saliba property land and park grants. Is the town still on track for May closing as required? I would also like an update on the tax assessment services investigation as reported in an April town manager report. I hope that hiring a principal assessor has been put on hold at this time due to these uncertain and unprecedented times. I'd like an update on that. I'd also like an update on the recycling education and enforcement coordinator position as discussed at the March 3rd meeting. And now that the Board of Selectmen has become aware of the Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 150E, which identifies the town manager as a member of the school committee, I would like to have this placed on the next agenda for a discussion. This topic is especially timely due to the ongoing teachers union contract negotiations, as well as the uncertainty and the potential cost of reopening school in the fall. This current situation is going to require all hands on deck, and I look forward to the positive influence the town manager will have as a member of the school committee.
Madam Town Manager, is the town manager a member of the school committee? I thought that was just for the purposes of contract negotiation.
Correct, as far as a voting member, comparable to a voting school committee member on the union agreements. Do you want me to wait on a couple of those items? I can.
No, if you have answers to them now, then this is the time.
All right, update on the Saliba property. I was corresponding with council today on that, as well as Brandon Kibbe. We are on track with that. The environmental assessment was completed. That was one of the items. We are aiming for closing in a couple weeks and to be able to submit for the reimbursement by June 1st, which is not our deadline. We have to get everything in by June 30th.
Great, thank you.
And the tax assessing services, right now, there is a RFP out for tax assessment services, as well as the job posting for the principal assessor. This is the Board of Assessors wanted to do a dual track as far as what they receive for responses for tax assessment services, as well as what they receive for applications for a principal assessor position. And the during that discussion with them, I made it clear that if it were a position, it could not exceed their budget, inclusive of health insurance costs. As far as
Yeah, because, you know, one way to reduce OPEB is to eliminate new full-time employees. So I would think that would be something we'd be trying to do. It used to be a goal of the town.
they're also looking at the service, as far as getting the best service to the town, and assessing service is particularly important. It brings in revenue as well. Update on the education enforcement position. That has all been put on hold due to COVID-19. The Board of Health, they would have to update their regulations, the trash hauler regulations, but that has been put on hold as well.
Okay, committee reports. Any committee reports from anybody? No. All right, fiscal year 2021 budget.
Mr. Chair, could you put up the adjustments worksheet?
I can do that. I'm getting that now. All right, so zooming these is the problem last time. I'm going to capture what you put in as an image, and then I can share the image because then I can zoom that in easier.
What's the title of the document?
Adjustments to fiscal 21 budget.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, just about there. Okay, right there. Okay, you should see it.
Yes. Okay, I'll start from the top portion with the revenues. So the changes that were made this week were reflective of all the final enterprise numbers for the sewer budget that was presented to the Finance Committee last week, as well as the operation for the solid waste enterprise and the water enterprise. On the bottom portion for expenditures, the revisions reflect a reduction in the technology budget for $18,063. This software can be paid this fiscal year. And the also inserts on the expenditure side, the sewer portion of the budget, as well as the solid waste water enterprise. And we also do have 2 previous years invoices totaling $476.21 that will have to be voted on the town meeting. So that new bottom surplus excess levy capacity brings that total to $998,492.11. The other worksheet is just a reflection of all these changes and with cells highlighted to see that if you're able to bring that up.
Which document?
It's the revenue expense worksheet.
Okay, hold on, let me. Revenue, oh, these, I think this one's even tinier print.
Probably,
All right.
yes, it's might.
Thank you for making all of this challenging. All right, let's grab that. And stop sharing that, and let's share this one.
Yeah, thank you for highlighting the changes.
Welcome. So you'll see, okay, the left side of the document is the revenue side. So the debt exclusion amount highlighted that's the estimated with inclusive of the estimated debt from the middle school, high school project and the pavement management. The 30,656 is the amount for the sewer coming out of the sewer enterprise retained earnings for their capital reserve and OPEB, their OPEB costs for 6056. The solid waste enterprise for 302,000, the water enterprise for 25,000, and the total budget for sewer enterprises $1,820,203.44. On the right-hand side of the worksheet is the maturing debt and the interest. Those are highlighted with inclusive of the estimated costs for the middle school and pavement management project, which we should know final figures hopefully next week. And the general government reflects the reduction of the $18,063 from the technology budget. Further down, reflects the sewer capital reserve account transfer, as well as the sewer OPEB liability transfer, the prior year expense of $476, and the solid waste, water, and sewer budgets. And sorry, and also the different from last week, and it doesn't show up on the adjustments because it's a total wash within the expenditure side, is I did have 110 in the OPEB transferred to the OPEB trust fund, and I'm going to be recommending that this article be deferred to the special town meeting, but that amount be transferred into the stabilization fund so we can access that at a later date.
Is that why the stabilization fund is going from 100 to 210?
210, yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any questions for the town manager on these updates? Okay, seeing none. So, review of annual town meeting warrant articles.
All right.
All right. So let's just go down the list, and I'm assuming, well, hold on a second. Michael Ray.
Yes, I had a question on that previous slide about just the tax levy. Did I see that correctly, that it's higher now than it was from when you were initially proposed?
That includes the debt exclusion number.
Okay.
Okay. So, review of annual town meeting warrant articles. So everybody has their track drafts. What I'd like to do is start going through these one by one and taking votes. I guess what I'd like to do, because I don't want the roll call votes to take up the lion's share of this time, So maybe we can just, if somebody wants, just like the town moderator does at town meeting, if you can say hold on any of these things, or we want to discuss them, but at the end of the discussion, we'll just either put it on an approved list or not, so we could do one giant approval at the end, and anything else that needs to be taken separately, we'll take separately. Is anybody not okay with that method? Just so I don't have to call on 4 people 30 times. Okay, I'll let the silence be approval. Okay, so Article A, to see if the town will vote to hear and or accept the regular written reports of the town officers and committees. Is that objectionable to anybody? All right. B, the revolving fund limits. Does anybody have any questions or comments about B? Hearing nobody. All right, so does anybody have any objections to it being on a consensus calendar here, as it were? No.
No, so far A and B will be on a vote to approve list.
Yeah.
That's sort of
Yep.
what we're creating.
Yes, that's exactly what we're creating, yes. Okay, C, regarding prior year expenses, Heather, did we lose you?
No, I was just, had to step away from my desk for a minute.
Okay. Is the prior year expenses, are we going with that, whatever it was, 476 number?
$476 and I think 21 cents.
Okay, I don't think we have to worry about the dime, but there is an amount, so we can actually take a vote on this.
Yeah.
So does anybody have any objections to that at all? No. Okay, we're on a roll. D. This is the budget. So let's probably, we're probably going to want to come back. You're not going to have final numbers on the budget till next week. We can approve that next week, correct?
Yes.
All right, so let's leave that for next week because there may be changes. E is the collective.
D is the FY20 budget though, right?
I'm sorry, you're right. It is.
D is the budget.
D
The
is
20 budget.
Yeah, the 2020 budget. Why did I say something else?
No, but I mean, it's not the new budget. It's the old, right?
the current year.
Getting
Oh,
into
yeah, yeah.
FY21.
Yeah.
And I have nothing to offer at this point for that article either, so.
Well, we'll leave it on just in case anything is unearthed.
Yeah.
E is the police officer's contract that because of pro forma, we passed over this and we need to vote on it. Okay, so let me put it defer list. So this is D over here. So anybody object to E being putting on this consensus? Okay, F is the
I'd
capital.
like to discuss F.
Excuse me?
I'd like to discuss
Okay,
F.
so we'll come back to that. G, that's the budget for FY21. So that's, I'm sure that's gonna want to be waiting till next week. For a vote, at least. We had the update just now. Then there's no H, no I, we've taken those out.
You have to, yeah, officially take them out. That's
Oh,
my, that would be my recommendation because we are not at a point where we can finalize negotiations for those 2 contracts.
So
Okay,
would you
so-
like a motion that we remove current articles H and I from the warrant since we aren't prepared for them?
Second.
Okay.
okay, all those in favor, Mrs. Adams,
Aye.
Mrs. Luck,
Aye.
Mr. Jeffries,
Aye.
and I for myself. So H and I now are officially removed.
And for anybody following along, I think we already did say, but those are collective bargaining. It wasn't completed, correct? Because of all the COVID-19 changes, we just didn't get to a place where they completed what they needed to. I'm assuming we'll revisit them in the fall.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, J is transfer to stabilization fund. Is that 210,000 likely to change?
The only way that would change is if there's changes to the capital plan.
All
So
right,
we
so
should hold that
let's
then.
keep J alone for next week. K is the OPEB, and then now, do you want it kept in, Madam Town Manager, or you want us to remove it and then we'll put it in next?
I think it can be removed and just we're deferring it to the fall.
Okay, so I would entertain a motion to remove K if everyone is so inclined.
So moved.
Right, second?
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, and all those in favor of removing K, please say aye. Mrs. Adams,
Aye.
Mrs. Luck,
Aye.
Mr. Jeffries,
Aye.
and I from myself. Okay, so K is removed. H, I. Okay. L is the sewer enterprise fund. That is their official budget, correct?
Yes,
So that is not likely to change.
not that I'm aware of.
So does anybody have any questions about the amount they put in, which is the 900, what is it?
1 million.
1.8 million, yeah. $1,820,203.44. Okay, I'm gonna put that under the consensus. M, to operate the sewer enterprise fund. Anybody have any objections to that? Seeing none. N, to approve to transfer from available funds into the sewer capital. Do we have that number, Heather? The sewer
That is
cap-
the amended number there, the 30,000, that's what was presented in
Oh,
their
okay. Gotcha.
budget. And I just want to make a note, L was their current year and M is the fiscal 21 for sewer.
Okay.
And there's, I know.
Do they have amendments to L then?
None that I know of. They put it in the possibility if they did. But I am not aware of any.
Okay, let's leave L off then. Let's give them one more week. If it's likely to change. So we'll just take L out, and M is this year's sewer enterprise fund budget, and then we're on N for the sewer capital reserve stabilization fund. Any problem with the $30,000 into that? Hearing none, okay. Oh, the $656 into the sewer trust OPEB. Any objection to that? Okay, that goes on the list. P, the solid waste disposal program. So that number is 302,000.
Correct.
Is that likely to change?
No.
Okay, so any objections to that? Okay. Q is the water department water enterprise fund. So that's $25,000. Any objection to that? Hearing none. R is funds to fund the public education government access enterprise fund. And that 191 is the same. Oh, hold on a second. Why is it on your list that it's only 17,000?
That's the indirect cost. The total has to go in there. I haven't updated that number yet on the spreadsheet.
Okay, but that's the rest of that money's coming from their
Yeah.
own fund, right?
Yes. Everything comes from their own fund. They're completely self-sufficient.
I just want to make sure people are aware.
Yeah.
So anybody have any objection to R? Hearing none. S, to see if this has to do with the capital budget for PAC. Why is this being recommended to be cut off?
They, at this time, at the time a town meeting will happen, they won't have sufficient funds in their retained earnings to fund the capital plan. So it has to wait to the fall.
Okay. I would entertain a motion that we remove S from the warrant.
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, Mrs. Luck,
Aye.
Mrs. Adams,
Aye.
Mr. Jeffries,
Aye.
and I for me, so S is removed. T, the salary admin plan, the adoption of the salary admin plan with the added definition of those positions as submitted by the Personnel Committee. Again, doesn't add positions, it just adds definitions of positions. Any objections to that? Okay. U, this is the primary school estimates for the delay, but we don't even have any money for this at this point. So I think I mentioned this at the last meeting that we would remove this, and depending on how things go in the fall, either put it on or keep it for next year to get money put to this, to do a design for the demolition and the recreation of a park or open space at that site, as we've talked about in our goals. So I'd entertain a motion to removing U.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Well, I'm looking at the notes on the side and it looks like we could pursue some of these things without town meeting. That's the note. Are these notes from town council?
Yeah, well,
It
right,
says, I
so-
believe the selectmen could pursue estimates for these tasks. Note the selectmen activities may be subject to the uniform procurement, et cetera. I'm just wondering, secure the estimates. I mean, is there really any cost to getting the estimates? I mean, part of what we're asking for here is more of just an information and taking a step forward. So although I agree with not spending money on something, there might be something we could do in terms of continuing to collect information. So we have something ready to move on in the future.
So the intent of this article was to assign money to get a design done. We don't need a town meeting warrant article to get estimates. We can get estimates anytime we want. We can put out RFPs anytime we want. But the intent was to have money aside so that when the RFPs came in, we could actually give this, just like the TCP process going on now, that we would have money so we could further that. So we don't need the article as written. That's what the comment is saying.
I understood it to be a little different. My understanding was the town in the fall town meeting, when we put together the survey, that we were kind of doing a poll informally. And I understood that this was kind of a continuation of that for town meeting, really to try to get a majority vote that is in support of demolishing the building. Because that is a direction, that's a movement. And so I thought that that's what we were seeking here, primarily, not just about authorizing funds.
Well, we don't, again, it doesn't have any weight. If they passed it as is, it wouldn't have any weight. There's no action to take except for us to get estimates. And we don't need town meeting to give us permission to get estimates, is the point.
Correct, but I thought this was just advisory.
Well, we already have one. We already had the poll. How many unofficial polls and straw polls are we going to do?
Well, I think this is an official one, but I may have a different perspective based on what Selectman Adams has to contribute.
Well, nobody, you can't point to this and say, well, you gave us permission to demolish it. No, we gave you permissions to get estimates to demolish it. So I don't think you get any information that you're looking for that's official, is my point. I mean, again, you can leave it on. It serves no purpose to leave it on, but you can leave it on.
I'd support leaving it on.
Mrs. Adams.
I think it's pretty minor at this point, and it's not authorizing any specific amount. I think we set it as one of our 3 main goals. I think if something like this continues to passes, it just gives us more sentiment, more direction. When we put out the estimates for demolition, people won't ask, what are you doing or why are you doing it? We've made it a part of the process. It's there. If it was, to allocate $500,000 for a park, I'd say, let's wait for fall town meeting. But I don't really see that it places any burden. It just helps us move in a direction. We're definitely going to have a lot of hurdles ahead of us, but hopefully we'll still be able to work on small projects. I see Old Primary School as a hazard to the town, with or without COVID-19, and it needs a solution. And so the costs associated with it may be on hold, but gathering information and preparing to take action, I think is something that we could continue to do. So I don't think we need a motion to leave it. So I guess we just stick with the one we have, but I wouldn't support removing it.
I agree with Chair Alonso that it doesn't really give us any new information, and we can't point to it later and say, oh yeah, you told us we could do this. It doesn't give us any information. And it'll take up time at town meeting because there'll probably be a discussion about it without it getting us anywhere. So I would be in favor of removing it.
All right, so that means we have a disagreement. So that's going to get deferred to next week. And hopefully we'll have a 5th member here next week.
If I may, we already voted to put it there.
Yeah, I'm not doing anything. I'm just leaving it till next week till we'll decide.
I don't think we're removing the ones that we have to remove because of all of the changes. We already voted to put it there. So in this process, we're usually voting whether or not the selectmen support these. We usually don't take them away. So I'm a little confused about what we're doing here at this point, because never in the past, and I know we're in a strange time, some of these have gone away because they weren't able to be accomplished, like the collective bargaining agreements. But typically, when we go through this process of voting, we're voting whether or not we support the articles. We already voted to put them there. I'm not sure we really, at this point, can vote to take them away. They've already been placed. We're just supporting them or not supporting them.
Yes.
So I might need a little guidance from Heather or town council on this removal process. I've not
Madam
seen.
Town Manager.
It is under the selectmen's purview to remove articles from a warrant outside of a citizen's petition.
Is there a deadline?
It would be by next week because it has to be signed next week.
Before the printing.
It's in fact one of our jobs, isn't it, to decide which articles remain on the warrant? Isn't that something that we're tasked with?
Well, there are some things, yeah, well, you can't take the budget off the warrant. So yes, there are some things you can't take off the budget, off the warrant, but this certainly you could. And if you look back at the earlier recordings in the year when this was put on as a placeholder, it was very clear that we needed a number and we weren't looking for a straw poll. Unfortunately, we never got to that point because everything that we're under right now happened. And so we never got to a number and nobody's going to spend any money anyway at this point. Madam Town Manager?
I just wanted to be clear, if it does stay on the warrant, is this, so this is not looking for a dollar amount for this article? And
that is, well, the way it's written, it's clear it's not asking for a dollar amount.
okay, so there's no action on my part needed. If it's,
That's correct. That's what the comment of town council is even indicating.
okay, I just wanted to be clear.
Right. So again, we'll take
Good
this up
idea.
when we have a full board here. V, petitioning the court this is the Lunenburg Library Trust Funds. And there's that whole section that was submitted by the Lunenburg Library Board of Trustees. Any objections to that being approved or recommended approval? I'm sorry. Okay. W. This is a report. Anybody against approving for hearing an interim report from the TCP Building Design Committee? Okay. X. This is amending chapter 110 of the town's general bylaws entitled Animals. So this has to do with dog kennels.
Should
Let's
we incorporate the council's input and look at it next week?
Well, we can, Mrs. Adams.
I raised my hand for an earlier one, so I can go back to that. But in the one that we're on, is this submitted by the police department? I mean, this isn't ours.
It is. So X and Y were submitted by the police chief, and I forwarded these comments to the police chief, and he is going to speak with town council because he has follow-up questions. So hopefully those will be answered by this Thursday's public hearing.
So for X and Y, I feel like I would like to see the presentation, or however we usually designate that, to say we withhold until presentation or something like that, because we haven't gone over any of this as a board.
Yeah, we can review it next week, depending on what he submits to the FinCom public hearing. And then even if we're not satisfied, we can defer to town meeting. You had something about another earlier article, though, you said.
Sure. With you, Heather had asked if she needed anything. And I'd say going into town meeting, if you were to stay, what we should present are what the estimates would be for the demolition and the design. I guess we really didn't put together, I guess we did a bad job at our goal. Regardless of COVID-19, this article should have helped us move forward or helped us offer an opportunity. But a lot of things like this, can't really make sense of them right now, but it's sad to look at this article that it really didn't accomplish anything much to begin with. But I guess we could give estimates, but I think it is just sentiment gathering, as we'd already done.
So are you asking me to get estimates for the design?
Well, if it stays, I feel like we'd want to present, I guess I'm just confused by how the article even got worded, that it doesn't really accomplish anything, which is sad.
It was supposed to be revisited. It was a placeholder that when we got closer, we were supposed to revisit it and put together a number that we wanted to assign to this, if it was available, to provide design services, so we could secure and offer design services. Very much like the article that started the TCP design committee that's in there now, but we never got back to it because everything happened.
Okay, so I guess we'll revisit it for fall town meeting if there is one. That makes sense. Okay, thank you.
So Z, Community Preservation Act.
I'd like to hold that one.
We'll hold that one until next week.
I guess we could vote on it, but did you want to wait for Damon to be?
Yeah, I want Damon to be on it. It caused a lot of discussion, and it's in all fairness.
Okay, so all the ones that are holding, then perhaps we wait for Damon.
Excuse me?
So there was one that Phyllis wanted to hold earlier, and I'm just suggesting any ones we're holding, we can do on our agenda when Damon's here. So all the ones that anybody has discussion on can be done as a whole.
Yes, next week. Yeah, okay. Absolutely. That's what I'm doing. I'm compiling that list. We have 8 so far, 8 articles. Okay, so AA is the Green Communities Task Force.
We have to vote next week, even if there's nobody here. I mean, we have to vote next week, even if there's only 3 of us, right?
Right.
Okay.
Green Community Task Force about purchasing the streetlights. I'm assuming this is going to generate some, should we wait? Did they present to the FinCom last week?
They did. Dave Blatt did.
And what is their intention? Is it still with the same choice?
Was yes, to purchase them
Okay.
from Unitil.
Is this something you wanted? Oh, Mr. Jeffries, I'm sorry.
No, I had a question much earlier, but it was answered.
Okay, sorry about that. So does anybody, what is the
So we're holding
pleasure
the-
of the board here?
Are we holding the green communities?
I'm asking.
I think we should.
What's the amount? Do we know the amount?
All the options and the costs were in that presentation that was sent out. Sorry, I don't know it off the top of my head.
Well, if we're holding it anyway, we can have that. for
Yeah,
next week,
we can look it up for next week. Mrs. Adams.
I was just gonna say, it's easy enough for these things to just be voted down also, if we don't want to be the ones to remove them, because people put a lot of time and effort and thought. If it goes through to town meeting and people feel like, whoa, we really shouldn't spend that, even if that is our feeling as well, then it can just be a nay. That's another option here for some of these things, is that they can stay. It doesn't mean they're going to happen.
Yeah,
we have
I'm not looking to, I'm
Option
not
to
looking
leave
to
them on the
remove
warrant,
that.
and then we can vote to recommend, right?
I think, right, I was looking at a recommendation, yeah. So.
Okay.
All right, we're gonna leave that for next week. The next one, that's AA, so BB, what is BB? That's the earth removal being changed over to the planning board.
Yeah, I don't support that, but I think that there's a majority of the board that does. So
If you want, I'll hold it till next week. If you don't, then I'll put it on the recommend approval. I mean, I'm asking you, so.
I think,
Sorry. The one change on this would be the order. That the planning board wanted those two articles flipped in order. So the more comprehensive one where the new regulations would be first, and if that doesn't pass, to change the planning board, the Board of Selectmen to planning board.
If they're articles, the order is fine with me, whichever way they want it.
I have a quick question on this. So the only issue that I see is that whenever we get our charter approved, our name changes to select board. So should this then also say select board?
I don't think it's gonna be, the charter is gonna be approved before we have a town meeting, because all they're dealing with right now is COVID-19 related legislation.
Right. So then we'll have to revisit that. Because if this is the charter, because we have the ability to change this ourselves. What that special legislation indicates is that the name changes throughout the charter. I'm assuming whatever the charter is at the time that they approve it. Since
Right,
it's a name.
changing to planning board, it's removing the Board of Selectmen verbiage. So in essence, if it passed at town meeting, our charter still hasn't gone through the legislative approval, the bylaw would be fine.
I see what you're saying. I think I misread that.
So does anybody have any, is anybody against these two articles? I mean, I know, Michael, you are one person who's against moving it to the planning board. And we can take it up with Damon is here. I don't know. It's really up to you.
I'm comfortable with you guys voting on this tonight. I'm not going to vote for it, but I mean, based on our discussion, it was 4-1. So it's 4-1 supporting these two articles.
So we will vote on it tonight, but we'll vote on that separately, these two separately.
Mr. Chair, we're just saying. CC, there's likely to be changes to CC based on town council's comments. And the planning board has a meeting Monday. So maybe holding off on.
Okay, B, B, and CC is postponed till next week. There we go. That made it a lot easier. Thank you. Okay. Flip. D, did we already take that off?
Yes.
DD, okay, so that's already off. And E, F, G, and H are already voted off?
Yes.
Okay. And then we have the last one, which was the, something we met with Mr. Workin earlier this evening. So.
I'd like to
That's
hold
what
off
we're
till
gonna-
next week.
That we're gonna wait till next week so we can hear what town council says. Okay, so if my tally is correct, these are the articles that we're gonna entertain a motion to recommend approval, and everybody follow me. So it is A, B, C, E, M as in Mary, N as in Nancy, O, P, Q, R, T, V, and W.
12 in all.
Thirteen I have.
Would you mind saying that again?
A, B, C, E, M, N, O, P, Q, R, T, V, and W.
Thank you.
So I would entertain a motion that we recommend approval on those articles.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, Mrs. Luck,
Aye.
Mrs. Adams,
Aye.
Mr. Jeffries,
Aye.
and an aye from me. We have removed from the warrant by separate vote H, I, K, and S. And that leaves, let me get back to the beginning here. In discussion for next week, it's going to be D, F, G, J, L, U, X, Y, Z, double A, double B, double C, and double I.
Exactly half.
Well, there's actually 13 on that one.
Yeah.
The other one
For
was
each of them
12.
13.
Anyway, so that's that. So next week, Madam Town Manager, if we can just put the warrant articles, make sure we don't put too much on the agenda. Let's make sure we get through those, or at least put this near the top.
Okay.
Town Manager report.
I'll start up with the vacancies. There's 2 alternate vacancies on the Agricultural Commission, 1 vacancy on the Americans with Disabilities Act Commission, 1 vacancy in the Architectural Preservation District Commission, 1 vacancy on the Finance Committee, 1 vacancy on the Open Space Committee, 1 vacancy on the Planning Board, and 2 associate vacancies on the Zoning Board of Appeals. Talent bank forms can be obtained on the town website and then scanned or mailed to the Board of Selectmen's office. TC Passios Building Design Project. The TC Passios Building Committee met last night with the architects, and we are proceeding with tasks that do not require access to the building nor in-person contact, including a review of all relevant building and planning documents, building code for architectural and structural issues triggered by renovation concepts, assessment of existing building systems and performing the civil and land survey that will also locate stormwater drainage and site utilities. Next meeting of the TC Passios Building Design Committee is Monday, June 1st, to check in with the architects.
May I ask a question about this?
Certainly.
I'm just curious why we're moving forward with it in this concept of essential versus non-essential and hiring freezes, where none of our current buildings are even open or accessible. I feel like just like we're tabling a lot to fall, moving forward on things like this just seems out of touch with what's going on all around us. I mean, we can't even get into a single building we currently use. Moving forward on concepts for future designs, especially such expensive ones, I feel like we should take a couple months off from it and work on it once it's completely accessible. It just seems a little disconnected.
The committee discussed that, but also the proposal is very limited and conservative in scope, and it doesn't require any access to the building. It's these parts that they can, as good timing to get done now, which they won't require access to the building. And this is also a previous town meeting project that was approved, not one that were similar to other things in the budget that we're deferring. It's already funding that has been approved previously.
I have a question. If we were to need additional classroom space in the fall because of COVID-19, could we begin to reuse Passios?
I don't know. I would have to look into that further. I don't know the answer to that.
I mean, you know, we may have to be, you know, renting portable classrooms if we have to increase the number of classrooms because we have to reduce class size. We're gonna have to think of something.
It's an option to think about, and I think we should probably, I mean, the school department and the school committee should probably be asked the same question, and that's a good question. That's, I'm sure, things that they need to think about.
Yep, and I think there's a lot of unknown right now as well.
Yes.
I don't know the answer to, so, but.
That's an understatement.
Are there any other questions on that one? The Town Hall Handicap Ramp Project. Bids for the Town Hall Handicap Ramp Project were received last week, and the project was awarded to Cornerstone Builders of Holyoke for a total of $46,619. $27,000 of this project is being paid through a earmark from the state, and the remainder is being paid out of the facilities budget. The DPW roof project. The roof project is now complete, and the final cost came in $7,200 less than the allotted total of $84,000 due to less replacement of roof decking that was provided for in the bid. The project went smoothly, and the contractor did a good job on the final product. Sorry. An update on Route 2A and Route 13, the intersection. I reached out to Mass DOT again to check on the status of whether they were able to access their program required to complete their evaluation of making changes to the traffic signals at Route 2A and Route 13, and was told that one of their engineers was able to go into the office last week to analyze the traffic signal system and prepare the necessary work order. It will now be up to their electrical contractor to conduct the necessary work. I would expect a response in the next few weeks on the status of when this work will be scheduled. Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Planning Grant. Due to the extension of closures of town facilities, the land use director has worked with the state on ways we can move forward on the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Workshop, given the current social distancing procedures. The MVP core team has a meeting tomorrow over Zoom, and a public workshop will be scheduled over Zoom at a later date. And the goal is to conclude this by the end of June. Green Communities Competitive Grant. On Friday, May 1st, we submitted a Green Communities Competitive Grant application. The grant request includes LED lighting project at the middle school, a hot water conservation project at the primary school, retro commissioning repairs at the public safety building, replacement of appliances with energy efficiency appliances at Turkey Hill, and as well as various town buildings, and funds towards the purchase of hybrid police cruisers. The total grant and utility incentives applied for was $108,962. Community Compact Grant Awards at the April 14th meeting had reported there were still funds in the fiscal 20 state budget for Community Compact grants. And the program allows for submitting up to 2 best practices to implement. And I submitted a grant request to implement a continuity of operations plan and to implement a financial trend monitoring system modeled after the International City County Management Association's financial trend monitoring system. I was contacted this week by the Department of Revenue, and both applications were approved, totaling a $50,000 grant award. The DOR representative did say they thought the 2 projects would be very useful to the town given the current situation.
Well, that is excellent news. Thanks for applying for that, and I'm glad to hear that we got those awards.
I was happy to hear that as well. In other meetings, events, and other announcements, Town Council has office hours in May on May 20th, 12 to 4 p.m. The disposal of yard waste at the old landfill off of Youngs Road is occurring each Saturday until May 16th, and the hours are 9 a.m. until 4 p.m. Conservation Commission will be having a meeting tomorrow evening, May 6th at 7 p.m. via Zoom. And the Finance Committee is holding their public hearing on the budget and annual town meeting articles this Thursday, May 7th at 6:30 p.m. via Zoom.
Anybody have any questions about the remainder of that report?
I did have one
Okay,
other,
so
sorry.
yes, no, go ahead.
I didn't write them in my report, but about a few weeks ago, the board had offered to postpone my evaluation, given the current situation, what I had on my plate and dealing with. And I said I'd reassess if I felt that it was going to be too much at that point. And I would like to take the board up on that offer to do it after the election.
Okay, that was offered to you, so that makes perfect sense. Mrs. Adams.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think it's a good idea. I don't know how the Google Classrooms and everything are going, but my brain is getting mushier and mushier as so many things are crossing through it. So I think we'll all do a better job, even though our board will look different and everything. I think it'd be nice to put true thought on both sides of some of these things that right now it just feels like, you know, did I do a good job with my dolphin report? I don't know. But yeah, makes sense.
Okay. Upcoming meeting schedule. So we have a Zoom
And
meeting.
Certainly you have enough on your plate, Heather.
Thank you.
Upcoming meetings. So we have our next Zoom meeting on the 12th, a week from tonight. We will go over the remainder of those 13 articles we didn't address tonight. Hopefully we'll have Mr. McQuaid back with us on that meeting. In the meantime, May 7th, this Thursday, is the Finance Committee public hearing, as the town manager just said. You can find out, it's a Zoom meeting. It starts at 6:30, and you can find that information from the town website under Finance Committee agenda.
Is there a possibility we'll need a meeting on the 26th?
I don't know. I can't answer your question. Everything is so crazy, so.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking.
Any public comment from the public, remaining? If anybody has any hands raised, I'm giving them an opportunity to find that. I do not. Well, you're not the public, Mr. Jeffries.
Just letting you know I'm ready.
All right. Public comment from the board. Go ahead, Mr. Jeffries.
Excellent. So, tonight I just want to, my public comment really is in relation to a discussion we had earlier tonight. We all in our daily lives, and I don't want to, I know that I tend to be a little preachy sometimes and long-winded, so I'll make sure tonight I'm not. I think that people need, in all businesses that we have, any expense we make, we have to justify. And when it comes to the town, the people who pay their taxes, they need to have confidence that we are making the best decisions and being as economical as possible. The process that we went through tonight was really from my view, was to do that due diligence. I think, and from my perspective, before a staff member makes a decision that could cost the town tens of thousands of dollars, I think that there needs to be some form of diligence stated to us that says, hey, this is a necessary decision for these kinds of reasons. And that doesn't necessarily need to be a meeting with heads, it could be a letter. But I think that we just have to be able to give people that good information that says that everything was done and that this is the best decision that can be made. And I'm disappointed with these tanks that was not the process that was followed.
Thank you. Any public comment from the remainder of the board?
I have a public question, private question for the executive session. I'm having trouble, Heather. I know I saw an email with a link to it. I'm having trouble finding it. So I don't know if you're able to text a link or send an email.
Can I resend the email to you?
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. I know I saw it. I don't know where it went.
My comment would be that I agree with Michael Ray's comments. And on another note, I appreciate that the town manager has chosen to defer OPEB till the fall and put it in stability for now. The stabilization fund for now. I think that's a great decision. Thank you.
My only comment would be to, as this situation is prolonged, I ask people to remain patient, to remain calm, and to understand that while there may be differing opinions about what's going on, being able to follow things in an orderly fashion. It's okay to have an opinion and it's okay to voice those opinions. It's not, and not that this is happening in Lunenburg, because it's not. I've been very happy with the response of our citizenry. But if you read some of the news and what's happening in other parts of the country, and even what happened in Boston, to be violent and let frustration and everything get out of control really doesn't help anybody. And keeping a level head is really the most important thing right now, one of the most important things. So I encourage people to please continue that while everybody wades through massive amounts of information, disinformation, opinion, and speculation as we find out what the best way forward is. So that's my only comment. We do have an executive session this evening, so I will entertain a motion to enter into executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21, Reason number 3, to discuss strategy with respect to pending litigation, and the chair so declares that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the government body, and to adjourn the meeting after exiting executive session, not to come back to open session. The subject of this is the Yeti dangerous dog hearing and appeal that is ongoing. So I'd entertain a motion to that regard.
So moved.
Do I have a second? Okay, roll call. Mrs. Luck.
Aye.
Mrs. Adams.
Aye.
Mr. Jeffries.
Aye.
And an aye for myself. Good night, everyone. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.